Hey everyone, we're trying to get our internet stream up and running, and as soon as we get the thumbs up, we're going to have you welcome our online audience. Give us 1 second. Hey, David, you passing my water right there? This big one? Yeah. Hey, Charles. Hey, Charles. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. Good afternoon, Wardate. Hey, give yourselves a round of applause for being here today. As we welcome our online audience, welcome to you online for being here. We are the Wardate Democrats. Today is, what is today? Today is a very important, right, it is, yes. Today is the Wardate Democrats forum for our U.S. representative, for the Attorney General, and for Mayor. And so I just want to welcome you officially to the Wardate Democrats public meeting for May 2022. I'm Troy Dante Presswood, the president of the Wardate Democrats, and I'm officially calling our meeting to order. I want to thank all of you for being here with us today in person. And I want to thank also our friends who are joining us via the live stream. We are here at Matthews Memorial Baptist Church, and we're really glad that you're here, and we're really, we want you to share on social, either on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, that you are here at Matthews Memorial Baptist Church and that you are here at the Wardate Democrats Forum. You can use the hashtag WardAteDems or the hashtag WardAteVotes so others don't miss it. And for those of you who are watching online, we invite you to download today's program book by visiting tinyurl/, actually go to the Wardate Dems page. If you go to wardatedems.com, you'll see the link where you can download today's program book. So you don't have to worry about a link. So wardatedems.com, you'll see all the information there about how to download today's program book. Before we go on, we want to take this opportunity to offer a moment of silence. We know that we have lost loved ones. Some of us are here today with heavy hearts, and so we know that some have lost loved ones from disease and cancer, perhaps COVID, or either community violence. We also remember those who are lost here as well as in battlefields across the country and across the world. So if you'll join me for a brief moment of silence for those that we've lost. Thank you. Before we go further, I want to introduce, as you know, we are here, as I said, at Matthews Memorial Baptist Church. And the shepherd of this wonderful church is here with us today to bring greetings on behalf of the church. So will you help me welcome Reverend Dr. Joseph D. Turner.
Good morning. I am Pastor Joe Turner, and we are here at Matthews, where we are people sharing the good news of Jesus Christ to transform unbelievers to committed disciples. And if perhaps you have not come to know that, we're here to explain it and express it. This is a place of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we're happy to have those who will be sharing on the panel, and we pray that as you share, that all will be included. There'll be a level of equity, and there'll be a letter of truth that comes forth. Thank you so much for coming. You're absolutely welcome. And again, we say welcome.
Thank you so much, Pastor, and thank you to all of the volunteers who have been tremendously helpful here at Matthews Memorial Baptist Church. And so we'll name those individuals a little bit later in our program, but I just wanted to just thank you and thank them personally and publicly for their support. Hey, we are being co-sponsored by the D.C. Democratic Party, and joining us today is the actual chairman of the D.C. Democratic Party. He is also a Ward 8 resident. If you will help me welcome Charles Wilson, chair of the D.C. Democratic State Committee.
Thank you, Troy, and good morning, Ward 8 Democrats. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm excited to be here. Of course, I am also a Ward 8 Democrat, living right down the street in Anacostia. But I want to say, first of all, everybody, we really should give a round of applause to the entire executive committee of the Ward 8 Democrats. Yes, because one, this is a 100% volunteer organization, and every member of this executive committee works really, really hard to be able to engage Ward 8 voters on the political process. So it's always good to say thank you. We appreciate the work that you do because sometimes this is a thankless job, and I know they work really hard. So I also want to bring greetings on behalf of the entire D.C. Democratic State Committee. You know, after this, I really want to encourage you, one, yes, listen to the great conversations that you're going to have today about how we improve the quality of life in the District of Columbia and how we get statehood. But I encourage all of you to get involved with the Ward 8 Democrats. If not the Ward 8 Democrats, get involved with your community and civic association because at the end of the day, we can elect who we want to elect. But the only way our neighborhoods become better, our communities become better, our schools become better, our streets become safer is when you get involved in the process. So enjoy today's discussions and make sure you get involved. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chairman Wilson, and thank you again to the D.C. Democratic State Committee, the D.C. Democratic Party, really, for their support and sponsorship of today's forum. You know, today, or rather May, is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so this is a good reminder to check on your quote-unquote strong friends. Make sure they're doing fine. Also, what about you? How are you doing? The pandemic has taken a toll on all of us, on top of the baby formula shortage and high gas prices and food prices and violence in our community. You know, and maybe if you have a coworker getting on your nerves, you just never know what's going on. But I want you to breathe and know that you're okay and that someone can help. Reach out to a friend, a good coworker, not the one getting on your nerves, or even a trusted family member. You can also check out a few hotlines that could help as well. The D.C. Department of Behavioral Health has a lot of resources, and you can start there. They have a number that I want to read to you, and that is 1-888-7-WE-HELP, or that's 1-888-793-4357. That's the easiest way to connect to services. This is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week telephone line. It's staffed by behavioral health professionals who can refer you to immediate help or ongoing care. So again, that number is 1-888-7-WE-HELP or 1-888-793-4357. 57. This is also a good opportunity to remind you that we're still in the pandemic, just in a different phase of it. So as you know, masks are required here. If you're not actively eating or drinking, we ask that you wear a mask. And then also, we want to do that because we want to protect those of us who aren't wearing a mask, those of us who have to speak. So we just want to remind you that. Also, continue to protect yourself and your loved ones, get vaxxed and get boosted. Okay, in keeping with our voter education mission, we are pleased to welcome you online and those of you who have joined us live here in person for our final forum for U.S. Representative, D.C. Attorney General, and Mayor. Now, we held our last forum last month for Delegate to Congress, at-large, council member, and council chair. If you didn't see that, check out our website, check out our social media platform. You can go back and watch that online. It was, I think we have over 1,000 views online, so you can go back and watch it. Check us out on Facebook and, of course, on our website at wardatedems.com. Today is your opportunity to hear directly from Democratic candidates vying for our support for these important offices. We will explore their records, their ideas, policy proposals, and vision for our ward, district, and the nation. The first round will feature candidates running for shadow U.S. representative. Then we will move to D.C. Attorney General, and then finally, the mayoral candidates. Each forum will last about 50 to 55 minutes. In lieu of an endorsement this year, the Wardate Democrats is conducting an online straw poll to give Wardate voters the opportunity to weigh in on who they believe won the debate, or perhaps they just won your heart. You can show them your support by completing the online poll. For those of you online, you can go now to tinyurl/Ward8poll. Again, that's tinyurl.com/Ward8poll. Or for those of you who are here in person, you can go to the same website, or you can scan the QR codes that are all around the room here, and it will take you straight there to the live poll. You'll need to fill out some information and affirm that you are indeed a Ward 8 registered voter, and then you'll get your ballot. You can do it now, or again, you can wait till the end. The results will be released by Monday. We've asked all the campaigns that you will see represented today to partner with us to support our Get Out the Vote efforts here in Ward 8. And we want to publicly thank the campaigns of Oye Owolewa, Linda Gray, Brian Spiva, Robert White, and Trayon White. You'll see their ads in the program book, or you will see their information on our marketing materials that you'll see on our website and on social this election season. So again, I want to thank Oye Owolewa, Linda Gray, Brian Spiva, Robert White, and Trayon White's campaigns for their support. All right, let's get this forum started. Now, initially, Marcus Batchelor was going to be hosting this forum. Marcus is at home. He's not well. He's not feeling well today. And so, Marcus, if you're watching, we know you are. We just want to give you a wave. We're going to send positive vibrations your way so that you heal well and you get back to yourself soon. And so, as a result of that, the responsibility for asking the questions have fallen on me. So I am going to be moderating the forum for shadow U.S. representatives. So at this time, what I'm going to do, and I don't need to introduce myself. You know who I am. You can Google me or find me out. So I won't be introducing myself as a moderator here. So what I'm going to ask now is that the two candidates who are running for this office, if you'll join me on stage so we can get started. Yeah, what's the noise? Oh, thank you. We will, okay. Two things. I'm hearing like some type of noise. Is that coming from, what is that coming from? Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, are we able to, is there, okay. Just so that I know if others might be distracted by it. Okay, so that's the other thing. And then we need to actually approve our rules of the day. And so at this time, I want to recognize Wardate Committeewoman Regina Pixley, who will read our rules of the day. Regina?
Good afternoon, everyone. Rules of the day. Here's how each round will go. Each candidate will be given 1 minute for an opening statement. We will start with 1 minute responses to questions and move to 30-second responses as we near the end. We may also move to rapid-fire questions with short responses for very short answers. Any necessary rebuttals will be given 30 seconds. In lieu of an endorsement, the Ward 8 Democrats will hold an online straw poll for registered Ward 8 Democrat voters. One must attest they are a Ward 8 resident only. I repeat, one must attest that they are a Ward 8 resident only. Anyone residing outside the ward cannot participate, and their votes will be removed. Voters who will need technical assistance here in the room can see one of our tech support volunteers. Can the volunteers raise their hand? Ms. Barber? In the back. Voters can select a candidate of their choice or vote to select none of these. The straw poll will close by noon on Sunday, May 22nd. The results will be released by Monday, May 23rd. The votes are not binding and should not be understood as an endorsement. I repeat, should not be understood as an endorsement of any given candidate. These are the rules of the day.
Thank you, Committeewoman Pixley. I would like to move that we approve those rules of the day. Is there a second? Second. Further discussion? Further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of adopting the rules of the day, vote aye. Those opposed? Any abstentions? The rules are hereby adopted. All right. All right, candidates, so you have heard the rules of the day. Are there any questions? All right. We will start with a 1 minute round, opening statement, and we will begin with Linda Gray.
Good afternoon, Ward 8 Democrats. I am Linda Gray, and I am running to be the U.S. Representative for Washington, D.C. I am a former biology teacher and now a retired principal of GCPS. I am a lifelong resident of the District of Columbia and have been active in D.C. my entire adult life. I reside in Ward 4. I've been a member of the State Committee for 12 years as an add-on, representing the Federation of Democratic Women, and as a Ward 4 Committeewoman. I am also a member of the DNC, serving on the Black and the Women's Caucuses. I work with the National Voter Protection Committee, and I currently serve as the Vice Chair of the D.C. Democratic Party. I am a statehood supporter, a statehood activist, and it is my pleasure to be with you, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Oye Owolewa, you're next.
All right. It's so great to be back home in Ward 8. My name is Dr. Oye Owolewa, and I have the honor of serving as your current U.S. representative. And with your previous support and partnership, we've been able to raise the mantle as we fight for D.C. statehood. Not only have we appeared in dozens of international and national publications talking about statehood, we've also reached across the aisle and talked to those who vote like us and don't vote like us to support D.C. statehood, which culminated in us introducing a D.C. statehood resolution through West Virginia's House of Delegates. But beyond that, I'm also honored to be still serving as a servant leader in Ward 8. Being the only at-large elected Ward 8 resident, I've been able to channel the focus back over here. We've been able to increase vaccinations in Ward 8, increase opportunities for vaccines when there was a shortage, and we most recently cleaned up Shepherd's Park, which was left as a blight in our Ward 8 community. Thank you again for supporting me. I hope for you to support again.
Thank you. Let's get to some questions, shall we? And by the way, if you are watching on our live stream, you can send your questions using the hashtag Ward8Votes, and we'll try to pull some of those live as we are conducting this forum for all three forums, but in particular this one as well. So if you have questions for our U.S. representative candidates, you can use the hashtag Ward8Votes and we'll see it. Let's get to some questions that's been submitted in advance. Oh, one other housekeeping matter. If you have a question in this room for any of our candidates, if you will see one of our volunteers, they will give you an index card, and you can then write your question on that card, and they will hand that up to me as well. Barbara, raise your hand so people can see you. Okay, she's in the back at the registration desk. And so if you have a question here that you want to you want heard or answered, you can do that as well. All right, so here are the questions that were submitted in advance. First one, other than statehood, what would be your focus and why? Let's start with you, Mr. Owolewa.
That's a great question. So many aspects of our lives in D.C. is affected by our lack of statehood, whether it's our health care, whether it's our education, whether it's just our lawmaking ability, our control over our lands. So that's why we've been able to increase the level of our work here. I vaccinated over 5,000 district residents since the beginning of the pandemic. We've also addressed student issues like student debt. I was proud to co-write a statement with the DC Young Democrats to really address opportunities to eliminate our student debt crisis. We're also taking care of our streets. Being a Ward 8 resident, I'm able to walk the same streets that you all walk, be next to the same schools you see, be next to the same blighted areas like Shepherd's Park, and we all address these issues because it's really environmental justice, and it's our opportunity to have a say on the things that happen in our communities.
Thank you. Same question for you, Ms. Gray.
Well, first of all, the role of the U.S. representative is solely to push statehood. And under that umbrella, there are certain topics, and many topics that you're going to discuss. Health is going to be one of them. The health inequities that we have this side of the river, housing inequities, food deficits. It all comes from having a lack of statehood. But most importantly right now, which is being threatened, while we continue to push for statehood, I'd like to make sure we do what we need to do to protect home rule, because that is where a real threat is coming, and coming sooner and quicker than we know. Thank you.
She didn't mention you by name, did she? Okay. All right. Well, if you want to respond, I have to also give her a time to respond as well. You want to keep moving? Okay. Well, Ms. Gray, let's hang out there a little bit. There's another question here that says, I know you are primarily focused on statehood, but how can we get equitable funding and treatment of National Park Service parks and properties east of the river? Can you do something about that? You can take that question as well.
Thank you for that question. Funding for federal parks does not come under the U.S. Rep. It does, however, come under our Congresswoman. That is federal funding, and I do want you to know, I do live in Ward 4, but trust me, the federal parks all across this city need to be worked on and need to be cleaned up, grass cut, dead limbs picked up. It's all across the city. It's not just in Ward 8.
Mr. Owolewa.
Now, why I agree that there's certain things that are outside the scope of this role, it's not an excuse to not do anything. So when people reach out to me and say, we need to clean Shepherd's Park, I reach out to the delegate's office, but I don't just say, I'm only the statehood guy. When we live in Ward 8, we see so many leaders occupy different hats, whether it's President Presswood, whether it's Stuart Anderson, whether it's Wanda Lockridge, whether it's Regina Pixley. We can't just say, this is my job, and that's where it ends. We have to step up, and that's what I've been able to do, even since being an ANC commissioner in Ward 8.
Thank you for that. So let's stay with you, Mr. Owolewa. What role does the shadow rep have in the fight for D.C. statehood? What specific things could you, as the shadow rep, do to expedite D.C. becoming a state?
That's a great question. In this role, it's all about advocacy. As a former ANC commissioner, we understand that there's limits to what we can do. But we have a platform to make things happen. In this office, we were able to go to West Virginia and knock on doors for faces that didn't look like ours in this room. We were able to talk to people that didn't vote like us, and we made things happen. With the support of not only this office, but other Congress members, other activist groups, we've been able to really push the needle, appearing in dozens of publications. We were able to collaborate with the Stonewall Democrats to have a virtual equality panel where we took on policies that affect people outside of this district. And the reason why that's important is because once people know the voices and the things that we stand for, they're going to say, there's an ally in D.C., and they're going to start supporting the things that we do over here. So while there's limits in our role, we maximize this platform and make things happen.
Thank you, Ms. Gray.
Could you repeat that question?
Yes. What role does the shadow rep have in the fight for statehood? What specific things could the shadow rep do to expedite D.C. becoming a state?
The U.S. reps has a lot of flexibility in terms of what it can do, and I'm very proud to say that as vice chair, we've been taking on some of those responsibilities for the last 3 years. The best thing that I can tell you, and the thing I'm most proud of, is that in all 50 states across this great country, we have been able to introduce a resolution and got a vote by every state party in the country to support statehood. That then allows us to take our work to another level, to state legislators and state delegates, which also are leaders in state parties. And I do believe that we put the work in that helped us to get to winning the House and only losing statehood by 4 votes in the Senate. I think we really did the work.
Thank you. Mr. Owolewa, in order to achieve statehood, we have to convince Republicans to get back on board the statehood train. Explain how you will do that.
That's a great question, and it falls under the wheelhouse of reaching across the aisle. There are not enough Democrats in the Senate to pass this bill without changing the filibuster. You have to reach over to people who don't vote like you and find reasons that you all can come to a similar perspective. For example, I was talking to someone who lived in Wyoming, and they were complaining about lack of control of the Yellowstone Park. When we take our issues of lack of self-autonomy and contribute to the other side, then there's commonality. Once we get the votes in Congress, Democrat side and some Republican side, there are going to be bills that are going to walk a little bit closer to equality. But I didn't we deserve full statehood because these itty-bitty bills are going to actually take back our eventual fight. Now, in terms of reaching across the aisle and getting Republican support, that's what I've done. I've appeared on conservative radio stations, I've talked directly to voters at their doors, and I made sure that they understand what we stand for in D.C.
Ms. Gray, same question. In order to achieve statehood, how we have to convince Republicans to get back on board, so how will you do that?
I do think that we need to reach across the board to talk to Republicans. It's not that they don't know better, they just won't do better. But the other thing that we need to do when we reach out to Republican supporters, we need to let them know that when they don't talk to their constituents about what they're going to do in D.C., they talk to their constituents about what they're going to do to them or for them from the states in which they come. It is only when they come to D.C. that they talk about what they're going to subject us to. So I think it is upon us to let them know that your representatives who are here to render harm to us are derelict in their duties to you because they promised you new schools and infrastructure and better jobs and better housing, but they're not doing that when they get here.
Ms. Gray, let's hang out with you here. So again, I know that these roles, and we've explained and we've heard that these roles are largely ceremonial, activism roles. to get DC statehood, but there are questions coming in about other issues, and so I think it would be good to hear some of your thoughts on this. Actually, one is for you, Ms. Gray. What have you done in the political field? I think I asked that question the right way. If I didn't, if the person who asked it, okay. No, that's what it says, though. Go ahead.
Because I didn't get the right.
Oh, okay. Go ahead and ask your question. I'll repeat it.
And my question is, what have you done in the community? I heard you have an extensive political career. I've heard all your accolades, but you mentioned nothing, as the doctor had mentioned, what you did in the community.
Okay.
What have you done?
Thank you for that. So the question for our viewing audience was directed to Ms. Gray, that asked, what have you done in the community outside of the politics stuff? Okay, there we go.
I'm very active in my community. For the past 25 years, I've been working in my community on the bike trail, and I'm very happy to say that the alignment we've been working for was approved by DDOT. The second thing that I've been doing, my view on affordable housing, has to do with co-op production. I happen to be the board of directors, the vice president of the board of directors for the Eastmont Cooperative, and it is probably one of the most successful cooperatives in this city. We paid off our mortgage. Our senior citizens are able to live affordably and comfortably, and nobody pays $1,000 to this day, monthly.
Yes, Mr. Owolewa, you want to respond to that as well?
Yes, and I believe your question involves tangibles. You know, we can all talk about statehood, we can all talk about pie in the sky policies, but as an ANC commissioner, I helped drive out a slumlord that was trying to push out Congress Heights Tenant Association. I'm working with the Brookland Manor Tenant Association in Ward 5 to do the same thing. I brought Narcan distributed in Ward 5 a week after 10 people died from fentanyl-laced drugs. These are tangibles. It may not be in the description of representative, but as elected official, it's my job to make sure that the places I live and the city I call home is better with me there than before me.
Thank you. Let's hang out with you, Mr. Owolewa. Name one thing, one really big thing you've done for the fight for DC statehood.
Well, that's a challenging question. You know, being in Ward 8, I knock on doors, and the last thing people want to hear is an elected official taking sole credit for group work. But if you want to go that question, my collaborations with other organizations to get the DC statehood bill introduced in the House of Delegates in West Virginia is a big deal. Right now, we have a senator in West Virginia that votes, or says he's a Democrat, but has been getting in the way of a lot of legislation, not just statehood, but also other progressive issues that people, not only in D.C., but in West Virginia care about. Whether you're in Anacostia or the Appalachians, you care about lead-free water. Whether you live in Northeast D.C. or in Sunnyside Chicago, you care about gentrification. And I've been able to step up, make collaborations based off of similar issues, and make sure we carry our voice on a national stage, even if we don't have a vote on it.
Ms. Gray, same question.
Repeat that, please.
Name the one thing you've done in the fight for DC statehood.
I've done several things in the fight for DC.
Just one?
Just one? Okay, I'd like to acknowledge and thank everyone who participated with us. I worked with the planners of the March on Washington that we had last August, and we organized and had a grand showing of our groups within the DC Democratic State Committee, which represents every constituency, and I'm extremely proud of the turnout.
All right, great, thank you. All right, here's the next question, and actually this is a good one. So if we can't achieve DC statehood, will you support retrocession back to Maryland so that we can finally have taxation without representation? Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. Taxation with representation. I'm so used to the slogan. So that we can finally have taxation with representation. Let's start with you, Mr. Owolewa.
Simple answer is no. Maryland doesn't want DC. DC don't want to be part of Maryland. It doesn't work politically. It doesn't work economically, it doesn't work culturally. My role is to make sure that not only DC becomes a state, but those fighting for DC statehood stay in DC once become a state. That means driving out some lords. That means making sure people are healthy. That makes sure that our voice is at the table on national legislation, even if we don't have a vote.
Ms. Gray, would you support retrocession?
I would not support that.
Okay.
Maryland does not want us. DC does not want us. We have been fighting for statehood for decades. There is not a reason for us to give it up. There will never be a reason for us to give up our fight for statehood.
Mm-hmm. Now, doesn't Maryland want us, though, in some way? Just a rhetorical question. It's untimed. But, I mean, every time I turn around, folks are moving to Maryland, so I'm just saying. Anyway, well, there's that. All right, here's another question sort of hanging out in that same space, and I'm going to actually come to you, Ms. Gray. Since they treat us like a territory, will you support removing us from paying federal taxes?
No, I would not, because that would then give them an excuse to continue denying us statehood.
Okay, Mr. Owolewa, do you support us stop paying federal taxes?
So that's a great question. I know in the past, our delegate Eleanor Holmes Norris supported it. I know last time around I did as well. But one thing I realized is that we're not taxes away from becoming a state. You know, the statehood affects so many different things, like the quality of our roads, it affects the laws that we're able to pass, it affects all different aspects of life in DC, that the really big push forward is equality, and not just what affects our wallets. Also, we don't want DC to become a tax haven. We don't want to see folks who don't vote like us, who don't represent our culture, come in to save a couple of dollars. We want to make sure that DC residents are able to stay in DC, and then once we become a state, become the first residents of the District of Columbia, or otherwise the Douglas Commonwealth.
Douglas Commonwealth, yeah, that's right. I haven't heard that in a minute. Okay. Here's another question. Besides statehood, do you have other priorities, other legislative priorities and initiatives? And I want to follow up. I got a question from someone who want you to think bigger about all 8 wards as well, not just, I guess, just Ward 8, even though I take offense to that. They were here at the Ward 8 Democrats Forum. But they do want, the question was, you know, let's look broadly about all 8 wards. And so, ma'am, you have... Okay, but let me have the question. Let me have them answer the question, and then if you have another one, we'll try to get to that. Okay, we're kind of tight on time. Let's start with Linda Gray. No. The question is, besides statehood, do you have other legislative priorities or initiatives?
One of the initiatives that is close to my heart, and I'll say it again, is housing. Everyone deserves decent housing, and I know that we are a city where there is lots of development, but what I don't see is home ownership. Those opportunities are not coming as they should, and that was what I was trying to explain before, that there is a model out there where tenants can convert properties and so that they have a vested interest and they won't be priced out, and they won't be taxed out, and they can call DC home for as long as they want to call DC home. Age in their properties, age comfortably, and enjoy all of the city services that we all want to have, but to have a safe home is a priority for me.
Thank you. Mr. Owolewa.
So oftentimes we hear about, in the Ward 8 forum, talking about what's going on in the rest of the city. It's similar to when people say Black Lives Matter and we hear All Lives Matter. When it comes to other areas, they're able to be specified. When it comes to our area, we have to share our resources and our conversation. Now, when it comes to federal legislation, we must pass the Equality Act. Make sure that we are protecting members of the LGBTQ+ community. We must pass the PRO Act to protect unions. We have to pass all these legislations because What we see is we have the same opponents for racial justice, same opponents for statehood, same opponent for environmental justice, and these offices are attacking each and every issue in different ways.
Thank you. Let's stay with you, Mr. Owolewa. Will we have statehood in our lifetime?
Yes. We passed the House of Representatives for the second time in history, and we have more co-sponsors in the Senate. We have about 46. We also have a president who also supports DC statehood. But this is nothing new. In 2008 and 2009, there was actually a supermajority that could have accomplished DC statehood, but they weren't ready to take that on. With the efforts in this office, with the efforts from the community, we are getting ourselves out there. This pandemic has made this world a much smaller place, and we can activate not only physically, but also virtually the people who have never seen us, who have never met us. And it's opportunities for us to really raise ourselves to the mantle and make sure DC becomes a state in our lifetime. In my opinion, I believe we're about 5 to 10 years away if we do everything right.
Mr. Gray, Mrs. Gray.
I'm very hopeful that we will have statehood in our lifetimes, but here's the thing. Because we were 4 votes shy in the Senate, we don't pick up where we left off. We're back to ground zero, which means we have to have another hearing in Congress, another vote in the Senate, and we're going to have a new Congress. If the Democrats lose the House of Representatives, we start all over again. But it's a fight that we cannot give up.
And of course, that ties into the question that came up earlier about working across the aisle. All right, let's go with this question. Do you support DC residents rising up in a January 6th style seizure of the U.S. Capitol until we get statehood? Let's start with you, Ms. Gray. Say again. No. Did you hear the question? Sure. Ms. Gray, we'll start with you and then we'll move to Mr. Owolewa. Do you support D.C. residents rising up in a January 6th style seizure of the U.S. Capitol until we get statehood?
No, I do not. I do not support that at all. January the 6th was a day that I call pure savagery, and we are much, much better than that. I have absolutely no problem with peaceful protests. As a matter of fact, I would support that, and I think it's coming anyway. But to do what happened January the 6th, absolutely not.
Mr. Owolewa, same question. I'll just put a preface of what we've been doing. Haven't quite gotten it yet. I think that's the spirit of the question. Would you support us going hard in the paint?
You know what's interesting? Everyone remembers the insurrection date was January 6th. But what day did we just recently pass H.R. 51? Anybody know in the audience? Exactly. Now, the reason why I don't support us doing it, because we know damn well if it was us going up into the Capitol versus the people who did it originally, the results would have been different. With that said, we have to push harder. We have to push our friends that live in other states to contact their representatives. Because if people from other states that don't look like us support things for people that do look like us, that's how you change things. So you have to reach out greater to the LGBTQ plus community. We have to reach out to the environmentalists. We have to reach out to every single person who's fighting for progressive changes. Because once DC becomes a state, we have 3 electors who will vote for those same things that they support. So DC statehood is not a standalone issue. It is environmental justice. It is racial justice. It is health care equality. It is wealth equality, because these are the things that we stand for here in the district.
Thank you for that. So there was a young lady in the audience who wanted to ask her question. She said we didn't quite ask it right. So tell me your name.
My name is Dorothy Davis.
All right, and what's your question?
My question is to Ms. Gray. This is the first time I've ever seen you. So you were saying that you work in your neighborhood, but y'all got to realize when y'all are here running for office, you got to work in all 8 if you're supposed to work in all 8, not just yours. And we never seen you. So this is my first time seeing you, and I'll be out here. I'll be out here. So, Ms. Gray, you got to come a little better than that about your ward.
So is it a comment or a question? Do you have a question?
It's both.
Okay.
It's both.
So let's pull a question out of that and say that I guess and we'll start with Ms. Gray. I'm sorry, streaming team. I'm sorry, I'm kind of moving around. Let's start with Ms. Gray about, what's your, I guess, approach to doing an all 8 ward strategy, and then we'll ask the same question of Mr. Owolewa.
First of all, I don't know that I haven't done an all 8 ward. I'm sure that there are plenty of people in Ward 8 that I have never met. There are plenty of people in my own ward I haven't met because it's forever changing. But I have been in Ward 8. As a matter of fact, I taught in Ward 8. I taught at Ballou. So I know that I've been here. I'm sorry I haven't been here enough to make you comfortable, but as your U.S. rep, you most certainly will see me. Well, then you really should have seen me. I'm in Ward 5 a lot.
Oh. Hey, I grew up in Ward 5. Ward 5 is my ancestral home. But thank you. We can't hear you because you don't have a mic. Thank you. Well, not on the people live. That's all we're saying. Okay. All right, I got you. Thank you so much. And I grew up in 5, and that's a spirit we bring from Ward 5 as well, just like Ward 8. All right, so let's go with you, Mr. Owolewa. As far as just an all 8 ward strategy, speak on that.
So there's tons of issues in all wards, especially when it comes to environmental justice. I've been proud to collaborate with people from Ward 1 through Ward 8. But I want to talk about another issue. It is very important to have at-large elected officials east of the river, folks who are by those schools, so folks who are by the roads, because you see things, and people tell you things that they can't tell you if you're not there. There are roads that are paved better. There are speed bumps that are done. There are traffic lights that are fixed because it's not just our council member when it comes to loud politics. I said that it's very important to have other elected officials from east of the river because it's not just Trayon White who can get things done. How many of us have gone to a council member meeting? Maybe not a lot of us, because we are not only east of the river, but we're east of the 95. Depending on the time, it may take you an hour to get there. It's not just politics, it's also healthcare. If you get shot, if you're pregnant, you need water breaks, let's hope it's at 8 o'clock at night, not 8 o'clock in the morning. This is what's important about having at-large elected officials all across the city, not just in the selected parts of Northwest.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. As we are beginning to wrap up here, let's go to our final question here, which is, do you have a question for your opponent? And let's ask that question of Ms. Gray.
If I have a question at all, it probably would be, why were you not a part of our initiative to push an agenda across the country as we did with every Democratic Party and got a vote to support statehood? Why were you not a part of that resolution with us?
That's a great question, and I can keep it very simple. As someone who's not a member of the D.C. Statehood Committee, I wasn't invited. Now, being an elected official as well as being a pharmacist, time can be limited, but I also work with organizations that reach out to me. That's why I was able to reach out to D.C. Voters for Animals for environmental justice. That's why I work with Ward 8 Woods as we clean up Shepherd Park. That's why I work with elected officials from Ward 1 through Ward 8 to get things done. When I wake up in the morning, I think about the very people in this room, how I could do a better job for you guys. If it means I miss a photo op, if it means I'm not in a nice picture, if it means that I have fewer friends with those in power, I will take that every single time because I serve you all, not for Congress people who want to take a nice picture with me who don't represent us. I serve you all.
Well, do you have a question for Ms. Gray?
Yes, absolutely. Typically, when someone runs for office and challenges an incumbent, there's criticism about their record, there's things that they say, maybe this person isn't doing well, and maybe there's opportunities for someone to say they improve. This is my third or fourth debate. I haven't heard any comment about my record. I haven't heard anyone disprove the fact that we raised the bar here, and I've heard things that don't matter, like your gender, like where you were born, not where you serve. So my question to my friend here is, why are you running?
That's my entire closing statement. I am running, number one, because I'm qualified. I'm running because I am a Washingtonian who cares deeply about her city, our city. I am running because there are certain things that I know in terms of disparities that, and if I want to just make it relative to Ward 8, in terms of racial justice issues, in the absence of statehood, D.C. is subject to federal supervision, which has often put health issues in the hands of non-resident members of Congress, enabling them to implement harmful health policies and denying funds, such as the CARE Act. I'm running because how many people understand that our rollout to the vaccine program was cut short because Congress didn't give us a dime from the CARES Act, and we had to dig deep into our supplemental funds. And it wasn't until we turned the White House blue that we were reimbursed $765 million to have a vaccine program, and now there is a COVID center in every ward. So I'm running probably on some of the same issues that you say you run on, but my record speaks for itself. I have my entire adult life in community service and education as a professional. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's actually hang out there. You mentioned as part of your closing statement. Why don't you go ahead and offer that up at this time? You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm asking you for your vote because in my lifetime, I have known not being able to vote for the President of the United States to our last congressional hearing when statehood was passed by the House but failed in the Senate by 4 votes. We are back to ground zero and must continue the fight for statehood. I ask for your vote because I'm a proven leader and because democracy is on the ballot. I ask for your vote because home rule is being threatened if Democrats should lose the House of Representatives. I ask for your vote to protect marriage equality and LGBTQ rights. I ask for your vote to fight for women's rights and women's reproductive health choices. I ask for your vote because we've not had a woman in the as a U.S. representative since 1999. I ask for your vote because I am a 5th-generation Washingtonian and I am committed to the Washington-Douglas Commonwealth 51st state.
Thank you. Mr. Owolewa, you have a 1-minute closing.
First of all, I want to thank the Ward 8 Democrats for putting this forum together. We were able to do these things even during the pandemic, and we're doing it now as we go beyond the pandemic. My story doesn't begin in Washington, D.C. My parents were born in Nigeria. I was born and raised in the United States, but I became a man in Ward 8, Southeast Washington, D.C. Right? I was an ANC commissioner following the support of Troy Presswood, watching what he did, watching what Trayvon's doing. I learned. I'm standing on the shoulders of everybody in this room. DC statehood is a critical issue that we can tackle together. And with your previous support, and more importantly your partnership, we not only got closer to statehood, but we brought tangible results to Southeast Washington, D.C. Anybody can get up here and say the right things. Everybody over here can speak strongly. But remember, whose number do you have? Who have you seen before? Who do you see outside cleaning up Shepherd's Park? Who do you see out there working with a mom-and-pop shop like Marty's Food to deliver to Afghan refugees in the D.C. area when nobody else was doing it? Vote for Oye because it votes for yourself.
Please, will you help me thank the candidates for being here today and for their indulgence of these questions. We do appreciate that. And again, if your question didn't get asked, you can continue to interact with these candidates. You can Google them. Those of you who are here in the fellowship hall, obviously you can interact with them here. But those of you who are watching virtually, you can interact with them in their online space, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever they are, website. Okay? Thank them once again. Thank you both. Appreciate it. All right. So while we're going to take a bit of a recess to transition here, but I wanted to do a couple of housekeeping things. First, you can vote now. We've been getting some text messages and some, not so nice ones actually, about voting. You can vote now. Voting is not what we've done in the past in terms of having to fill out a piece of paper. You would do it online. There are QR signs all around the fellowship hall where you can actually scan it. It takes So I just want to make sure that people understand that you can do that and do that now. It's been open since noon, and it will close by noon tomorrow. If you need assistance, we have volunteers here that will help you access the poll. Let's say I don't have a phone that scans QR codes and all of that. That's fine. That's what we're here to help you do. You can say, I don't have an email address. That's fine. That's what we're here to help you do. So if you will reach out to one of our volunteers. In fact, I see some friends here in the house. If you're just, my friends, if you'll raise your hand so that, if you're tech savvy and can help out some of our seniors, just raise your hands, or not seniors, but folks who may be seniors or tech, challenged a little bit, just raise your hand. And folks will help you. That's what we're here to do. We will provide you with tech support. Again, this poll is only for Ward 8 registered Democratic voters. I want to say that again. Ward 8 registered Democratic voters. You'll be asked some information, and then you will get your ballot, okay? So voting is live now. So those of you who are watching me, who are within the sound of my voice, voting is live now. You can also vote at tinyurl/Ward8poll. tinyurl/Ward8poll. You can do that as well. Okay, voting is active. I just want to be clear if I haven't been already. Speaking of voting, I just want to quickly say that you can vote in person, and you can also vote at an early vote center on either during the early vote period or on election day. If you're seeing our scroll right here on the screens, you see that there are some Ward 8 based vote centers that will be open for you to drop off your ballot. 40 vote centers will be open across the district during the early vote period, which runs from June 10th through June 19th. You can vote at any location. And then the 90 vote centers will be open on election day, Tuesday, June 21st. In addition to those 40 early vote centers, 90 election day vote centers will be open, and then 55 drop boxes will be open across the district as well. And this is going to be starting on June 10th. By now, you should have already received your mail-in ballot. If you haven't already received it yet, you might not have a most updated address on file with the DC Board of Elections. That's okay. You can go to one of these vote centers that we're talking about right now. So again, if you haven't already received your mail-in ballot, which you can fill it out now and drop it off, or you can fill it out and drop it off on election day. It's up to you. But these vote centers will open on, you can mail it back now, but the vote centers will open on June 10th. And so will these drop boxes as well. And they're open all night long up until election day. Again, if you're watching the screens here, we have the vote center's location listed for either early voting, same-day voting, or election day voting, and the drop box location. So take a picture of the screen if you need to do that so that you know exactly where you can, where you will be able to vote if you don't want to vote by mail. And if I could just say, as we get closer and closer to election day, don't vote by mail. Use a drop box. Use a drop box, use a drop box, use a drop box, or go into a vote center. Go into a vote center. All right, once again, I just want to remind people that the straw poll is open. You can do that now on by scanning these QR codes. If you need assistance, you can see one of our volunteers who will help you get onto the straw poll. We do appreciate you doing it this way. This way we don't have a whole lot of people, touching paper and stuff, okay? All right, we're going to take a brief recess, and we will reset in 5 minutes. Hey folks, just want to make sure that you understand there is no active campaigning. Let me get everyone's attention, please. Let me have your attention. If you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear it, clap twice. Thank you. There's no active campaigning in the fellowship hall. That should be done outside of the property. We don't mind the shirts, but the active campaigning, we will ask you not to do that here. Okay? Can we all agree? All right. We'll be back shortly.
I prefer a document if you can. A document, if you can print it out. But if not, I'll take it. I'll take an email. Yeah.
So this is one here for Attorney General,
Okay.
and those are for Mayor.
Are
So,
we doing a rapid response or a rapid fire or no?
no.
Okay. Okay, very good.
That's good. Let me bring us back in. No. She can wait.
No, but I mean, are we going to shorten the questions to keep
Oh, yeah. I'll give you a cue. We'll give you a time cue from that table. Well, I don't want to shorten them too bad. So maybe, yeah, we'll do a, yeah. No.
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 I'm sorry, this is not.
No.
No.
No. Could you do me a favor? Can you hand me my my iPad?
You can invite her to come sit at the 2 o'clock debate if she likes it.
Yeah.
But she can't come and
We're over. A live mic. All right. It's just a question.
from the audience.
All these are from pre-registered questions. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Welcome back. Welcome back to our online audience. Just a moment of housekeeping here. If you will be very careful about crossing here in the center, because as you can see, our cameras are pointing toward the stage, and so if you cross the stage, obviously could be an issue for folks at home. But thank you so much for sticking with us. We had to go through a transition here, and we have a new moderator. Aren't you excited about that? And it's not going to be me again. And by the way, Marcus Batcher, feel better. We know you're at home watching. And so he was going to, of course, moderate the previous one, but he is not feeling well today. And so we, out of abundance of caution, we want him to stay home. All right. So once again, this is your opportunity to hear directly from these Democratic candidates who are vying for your support for these important offices. We're going to explore their records, their ideas, policy proposals, all that good stuff on behalf of our ward. This forum that we're about to enter into now is for Attorney General. And then after this one will be for Mayor. And like I said earlier, in lieu of an endorsement, you will be voting through an online straw poll. And you can do that by going to tinyurl.com/Wardate poll, or you can scan, if you're in-house here, you can scan one of these QR posters here, and it'll take you straight there. You have to fill out some information, and once you do that, it gives you your ballot. If you have any technical issues with doing an online poll, please let me know. Let any volunteer know, and we will help you get online and take the poll. Last thing here is that this is only for Ward 8 registered Democratic voters. If you are not a Ward 8 registered Democratic voter, do not take this poll. And once again, we want to thank the DC Democratic Party for being a sponsor. We also want to thank the campaigns for partnering with us to get out the vote here in Ward 8. We want to publicly thank the campaigns of Oye Owolewa, Linda Gray, Brian Spiva, Robert White, and Trayon White. You'll see their ads in the program book. If we're out of program books, you can scan the QR code and you'll see those. You'll see their ads there. All right, let's get started with this next forum. So, Delia Gonzo is a reporter and anchor at WUSA 9. She joined that team in 2010. She got her first break in business right here in Washington at the U.S. Senate Radio TV Gallery and at NBC Network News. She then left D.C. to pursue her on-camera reporting endeavors, which then took her back to her native New England. Delia spent 5 years crisscrossing the region, working at several stations in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. During that time, she had the privilege of covering a number of national stories, including the station nightclub fire in Rhode Island that claimed 100 lives, and the historic vote on gay marriage in Boston, the first vote of its kind in the country. Thank you. Thank you. All right, for those watching online, we just had some folks talking. We had to get them straight. All right, so before returning to the nation's capital, Delia spent 4 years in Baltimore, where she was named Baltimore's best reporter in 2009. Among her most memorable stories in the Charm City was Delia's profile of a woman and her daughter living in a home without electricity or running water. But that reporting got her safer shelter in the end. Her reporting on the homeless here in D.C. has helped people get off the streets and reunite families. She has a passion about reporting facts, challenging the status quo, and telling compelling stories at the heart of our community. Delia is a first-generation Cape Verdean American born in New Bedford, Massachusetts, of immigrant parents who taught her the invaluable lessons of faith, hard work, and perseverance. And she lives east of the river with a husband and 3 daughters. So will you please welcome our moderator for the next 2 forums, Delia Gonzalez.
Troy's a bit taller than I am. I have to bring that down. Thank you, Troy, for that introduction. It's always interesting to hear your own bio read from someone else. Most importantly, I love this community, and I love elevating our stories. And I love seeing a community at work, and this is what we have today. It's a great day in Ward 8. Outside, downtown Anacostia is buzzing, and this historic church is buzzing as well. A great day of community where folks are being active, civic members of their neighborhood, and engaged participants, and really invested in the future. So I thank all of you and all of you online for investing into the future of this community and investing a portion of your afternoon. So let's get right to it, and let's meet our candidates. So before we get into that, a little housekeeping. So here's how we will proceed with today's forum. We'll engage in 2 different conversations. Of course, we already had one debate earlier today. D.C. Attorney General is currently going to happen, and then Mayor. So our aim is to open the candidates up to learn more about their policy proposals and visions for Ward 8 and the district as a whole. Each conversation will last about an hour and will be debate style. I'll ask a few questions, but really this is all about you and for you. So we want to have a discussion. We want to open this up to the community. So a lot of you received index cards when you came in. Hopefully you wrote down some questions. And folks online, you can feed your questions in through the chat and use the hashtag Ward 8 votes, and we will monitor the chat and try to get to as many community questions as possible. So here's how this round will go. Each candidate will be given 1 minute for an opening statement. We'll start with 1-minute responses. As we move closer to the end of our debate, we'll shorten up the responses to about 30 seconds. We will try to have a rapid-fire question period with short yes or no responses based on the questions that we receive, and any necessary rebuttals will be given 30 seconds. So candidates, if I know you are no stranger to this, if you are named directly in a response, you will have 30 seconds to rebut. So let's meet our candidates. Brian Schwab, Ryan Jones, and Bruce Spiva. If you gentlemen can please join us on the stage. Round of applause for our candidates. Thanks for being here. Oh, name tags, yes. So Ryan Jones to my immediate right, Brian Schwab in the middle, and Bruce Spiva at the far end. The D.C. Attorney General is the chief legal officer of the District of Columbia. The Attorney General enforces the laws of the district, defends and provides legal advice to the district government agencies, and also protects the interests of the district residents. The Attorney General is elected to a 4-year term every non-presidential election year. We have 3 candidates running for the open seat being vacated by current Attorney General Karl Racine after he decided not to seek re-election. So, our candidates, Ryan Jones, Brian Schwab, and Bruce Spiva. Each will have 1 minute for opening statements, and then we will go into our debate. So let's get right into it with our opening statements. I will start with Mr. Jones.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
There it is.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me now? Hope you're all doing well. I'm excited to be here and share my vision for Washington, D.C. to ensure that we're all enjoying a brighter future here. I'm a native Washingtonian. I grew up in Northwest. I've spent time playing at Berry Farms, where I was the first ever Rookie of the Year, right down the street. I care very much about this city. I know that we are in great, crucial times where we have an opportunity to improve the city to ensure that we all have a brighter future. I want to put new solutions in place to cure old problems. We have historic issues that continue to plague us, and we need to put things in place to allow us to get over them, not for right now, but many years to come. I look forward to our discussion. I have friends here that I'd like to mention. Jock Patterson, who endorsed me. I'm truly grateful. I have other friends supporting me, and I look forward to what we have to talk about for the rest of the day. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. And keep in mind, everyone, I think you do have to turn your microphone on, and we do have a timer who's doing a great job with keeping everyone on task. If you can just keep in mind that we do have a schedule to follow. Mr. Schwab, 1 minute.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here. I'm Brian Schwab. I'm a third-generation Washingtonian. My mother was born here, my grandfather. My 3 daughters are fourth-generation Washingtonians. I love this city. It's been a wonderful place to live and to work and to raise a family. I got a lot of good advice from my dad before he passed away, and one piece of advice is that God gives us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We all got to try to listen twice as much as we talk, and that's what I've been doing my whole life. My life as a lawyer and my last 6 months as a candidate. I'm a first-time candidate. And what I hear from people around the city is that they love Washington, they're proud of it. We're a city abundant in resource. What we don't have a problem with is having enough resources in D.C. What we have a problem with is we don't share the resources and the opportunities that those resources allow for fairly and equally everywhere. The single most important tool we have in our toolbox is the law. And putting the law in the hands of the right lawyers to address that equity gap is why I'm running. It's what I'm going to do every day as your next Attorney General, making sure we're working as hard as we can to make the city as it is closer to the way the city as it should be.
Thank you, Mr. Schwab. Mr. Spiva, 1 minute.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ward 8. My name is Bruce Spiva, and I'm running for D.C. Attorney General. You know, I stand on the shoulders of my late father and my mother, who both grew up in the Jim Crow era South. And both of them were the first in their families who were able to get a higher education. And both went on to lives of service for others. My dad graduated from Tennessee State in 1954, the year of the Brown decision. And he had a strong belief in the power of the law to change our lives for the better. He's the one who inspired me to go into the law. He's the one who instilled in me a sense of courage and duty to fight for change. And that's what I've tried to do these last 30 years that I've been practicing law, fighting for civil rights, fighting for voting rights, fighting for consumer protection and for antitrust enforcement. And that's why I want to be your Attorney General. I want to use the time that I have left to live up to my father's legacy, to fight for everyday people, particularly those who've been left out and left behind. I look forward to your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's get right into it. This is a Ward 8 crowd. We are speaking directly to the needs of the Ward 8 community. So our first question, in your own words, how do Ward 8 residents directly benefit from the Attorney General role, given the more critical and nuanced needs of these residents? How would we benefit under your leadership? And I'm going to start with the same order that we did. So, Mr. Jones, how would we benefit Ward 8 residents specifically from your leadership?
Yes. So we look at housing issues. We look at opportunities for people to have employment opportunities. And as Attorney General, you can step into housing matters and you can litigate on behalf of the residents who need it the most. I believe that you go into courtrooms, you step in front of the agencies, and you ensure justice is occurring on behalf of the residents. This is not something that's easy, but these are complex things that you need a sharp legal mind in order to evaluate. I want to bring a fresh, new look and create the solutions that we actually want. I'm outside talking to residents, and I hear what's necessary. I hear what their requests are, and it just takes the political will and the legal force to step out and fight on behalf of these residents. They're asking for something, you become their attorney. That's what the Attorney General should do for residents in Washington, D.C., but especially here in Ward 8, and I want to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Schwab, same question. How will folks here in Ward 8, our neighbors, benefit from your leadership?
I hope I'm not offending anybody by not standing up. I can stand up. I can listen. This is the most important thing an Attorney General does, is listen. Not to come into Ward 8 or Ward 7 or anywhere else and tell you what you need. It's to listen and to have relationships with a robust community engagement arm in the Attorney General's office so that the AG is in the neighborhoods, listening and learning. What I've learned about during the course of this campaign is that we have barriers to entry in certain communities. We could talk about the history behind that. We know that. Years of racism both in our city and in our country. But those barriers to entry prevent things like building wealth through the ownership of a business, building wealth through the ownership of a home, being susceptible to consumer protection scams that are too often targeting homeowners and seniors on this side of the river. The Attorney General needs to be vigilant in fighting back against that, because if we do want the equitable city that we all want, the law has to be put to work to do it. And the only way it can work from an Attorney General is to be in community, listening and understanding. That's where the cases are going to be made. That's where we can push the information out to the community, and where people can see the trends and can help to protect themselves so that the AG doesn't have to protect after the fact.
Thank you, Mr. Schwab. Same question, Mr. Spiva. How would folks here in Ward 8 directly benefit from your leadership?
Thank you. Well, I've been talking to a lot of residents of Ward 8 and Ward 7, communities east of the river, and what I'm hearing is the challenges that folks are facing are housing instability, gentrification, and the effects of that on folks who've been here a long time, criminal justice and criminal justice reform, and education, of course. And these are the types of fights that I've been engaging in my entire career. I fought for low-income residents in Columbia Heights who were pushed out of their housing, Latino, African American, and Asian folks. Some of them were riding around on city buses with children at night, looking for a place to stay. Well, the reason I want to be Attorney General is I want to use the power of the law to fight for the tenants, so that we force the slumlords to fix up their buildings, not allow them or the district itself to push the tenants out of their housing. And there are many other ways that the AG's office can affect the lives of people here in Ward 8 along those critical issues.
Thank you, Mr. Spiva. Why don't you keep standing, because I have a question right on that topic. Since you talked about home ownerships and landlords and keeping people in their homes, we were given a question, and I have to preface, these questions are coming from our community. These were registered questions that are coming directly and speak to their needs and desires. And this is a question that is very timely and speaks on what you were just discussing. I was locked out, then evicted in December 2021. The landlord was given funds on my behalf. The property manager and their lawyer told the owner to give me the keys back, but he refused. Will you prosecute these owners? P.S. I had a newborn son, and this is, thank you, signed a Ward 8 resident. You may not be able to speak specifically to this case, but we do know that so many of our neighbors are living in desperate and dire, uninhabitable situations from these landlords who are profiting off their backs. What will you do to not only maybe address this particular situation, but to make sure people stay in their homes and have a safe and healthy home to stay in, and landlords don't take advantage of them?
Yes, thank you for the question, and I'll be honest, it makes me angry to my core when I hear something like that. That was the kind of anger that I felt walking the blocks and talking to folks in Columbia Heights who had the same thing happen to them. And I can assure you, one, that people like that will have a friend in the Attorney General's office, again, trying to use the law to help the tenants, to help the people, not on the side of the slumlords. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to go after those repeat actors who keep using those same techniques to try to push the low-income folks out of their housing and make way for high-end condos. We're going to put those, thank you, we're going to put those landlords into receivership if we have to and make the repairs ourselves. And we'll force them to sell their buildings to someone who will keep it up for the people. I can't promise that I can solve every problem in every situation like that, but I can promise you that I will fight for you every day. Thank you.
Mr. Schwab, same question. What will you do about what people call and describe as deadbeat landlords taking advantage of our residents, our neighbors? And in this case, this landlord was told by the lawyer to give the keys back and refused to do so.
Yeah, the first case I ever tried when I was a second-year law student was a woman with 2 young babies. I'll never forget Sandra Andujar and her 2 young kids being threatened with eviction in the middle of the winter in Boston into the cold. And I saw firsthand what it meant for an advocate to stand up, to go to court and prevent injustices like that from happening. And you are right, these things happen way, way too frequently in our city. We have to understand what are some of the root causes as to why we're seeing the affordable housing crisis in our city and why we're seeing landlords behave in a way that is unlawful. As your AG, it's important to make sure that the law is rigorously enforced because that's the law. We have good housing laws in the District of Columbia. We need to enforce them with lawyers who are smart and know how to put the law to work. We also know about the basic human dignity of living in a place that's warm and safe. It's a basic human right. But it's also critical for us, if we want to work our way out of the affordable housing crisis in our city, to make sure we don't allow units of housing to fall out of the housing stock. And that's why an aggressive AG protecting the existing housing stock is critical, and that's something I will lean into as your next AG.
Mr. Schwab, thank you. Mr. Jones, same question. 1 minute.
In the practice of law, you have to analyze facts. You find your issues, and you step out zealously, and you fight on behalf of your clients. I've been doing that. I've started out in landlord-tenant, and I've seen tons of cases just like this. I have a present matter pending right now with a property not too far from here where a tenant is fighting to stay. The tenant's not only fighting to stay, but fighting to purchase that property, and we're in tough negotiations right now. And these are the types of things I believe an attorney general can step up to the plate and address. What they can do is make it sure that people aren't comfortable putting these policies in place and continually finding ways to force folks out, trying to find a way to maximize their dollar while not caring about what happens to the person on the other side. After learning everything you need to know about the practice of law, who you are becomes more important. What types of issues are you fighting? What's your value system? That's what matters. And I'm saying I have the values. I know what needs to be done, and I'll take these fights on.
Thank you. Next question, again from our community members. If implemented correctly, community policing involves MPD very little. Residents do not feel protected in this endeavor. How will you improve the community's involvement in policing neighborhoods when they do not feel safe sharing information or camera footage from home security systems? We hear it all the time. We need neighbors to come forward and help the police. The police can't do it alone. But if the folks don't trust the police, then it's very difficult to come forward if they fear retribution and retaliation. So I will start with Mr. Jones. How would you improve community relations with police so that the community is more willing to share information and work as partners?
I think everyone's aware of the Cure the Streets program, right? Yes? All right. So I believe Cure the Streets can be used as a way to help with policing in our city. I think it's a way to allow folks to...
Go ahead.
The thought is to use Cure the Streets to partner with police, repair the relationships that we've had. It's a historic issue, and we need to find ways to step to the plate differently. These are creative ways to do it. We're not saying, hey, look, you nonprofit group, you go figure out what's happening in the problem in the streets. But you got to work with the people that are that are given the authority to make these decisions. And we have to cure and repair relationships. And this is a long problem that we have. This is a problem that requires a lot of time to resolve, but we have to start. And it's right now that we have to do it. That's something that I would do. Also, going into the police force and resolving the issues there that create the historic problems that we've had between the community and the police in general.
Thank you. Mr. Schwab, same question. How would you improve community relations?
Well, it is essential for the safety of our city and the community relations that there be a better level of trust between the MPD and communities, particularly communities here in Ward 8. The police have to be part of an overall solution, but we need to be thinking about how police are being used. We too often put police into positions where they're not well trained or well expected to do the work. Certain crises better call out for a mental health professional or domestic violence professionals, or perhaps substance abuse professionals who we can partner with our police, or better yet, can have those types of professionals called to a crisis instead of the police. But here's one of the key things I'm going to do as AG, because the AG's office represents the MPD along with lots of other agencies. We've got to try to create a greater sense of transparency from our police department. We need to see the data on stops, on seizures, on what's happening, not just to make sure the work is being done in a constitutional and lawful way, but we want to know, is it effective? Is it working to help us become a safer community? Only by greater transparency from the MPD can the community start to get a level of trust, and it happens in small steps along the way, but steps on trust build on other steps.
Thank you, Mr. Schwab. Mr. Spiva, same question.
Thank you. We've had a recent report on improvements to the policing, and we need to not let that sit on the shelf and gather dust. We need to start implementing some of those suggestions. I also think that there are situations now where the police are called upon to respond to what are actually behavioral health issues, mental health issues, that they are not trained to solve. And so we need to expand our program of mental health providers who can actually provide the response in that situation, or have a co-response in a situation where it's violence threatened. I've also heard from members of the community who said that they need more police in their neighborhood. And I hear them. And I think we need to listen to them. And we need to make sure the police are properly trained and that they're respecting the community and that they are truly in partnership with the community. But I don't want to come in here, you know, from out of the ward and say, hey, we need to get rid of the police, when I know there are members of this community who want the police and need the police in their community. Thank you.
Thank you. Question from our audience here, following up on policing, and it's an easy one and an impactful one. Do you support the mayor's initiative in hiring more police officers? Mr. Jones, I'll start with you.
I've said the people in power currently have the best understanding of what's necessary. We're looking at hiring 3,500 more police officers right now. That's to cover any attrition that's happening in the profession of policing, which is ramped up given the heightened state of conflict that we are all talking about trying to resolve between police officers and the community that they serve. And I look at what's being done as a way to as an opportunity to hire from Washington, D.C. Hire people from right here in the neighborhoods, the people that know who they will be policing, so that they have an opportunity to work collaboratively, and that policing can, the marred history of conflict between police and those in the community can resolve when it's somebody that you know have known for a very long time. You have a different interaction with them. And I would support hiring from in Washington, D.C. You get cruisers on the streets, you deter crimes that way, and that could be a potential resolution for what's going on right now.
Thank you. Mr. Schwab, same question. Do you support hiring more police officers?
So we had a recent call for an audit of our MPD because we have the largest number of police officers per capita of any urban setting anywhere in the country. Now, we have some unique aspects of Washington because we're a county, we're a state, and we're a city all at the same time. And there are some reasons why we may have more police than any other area. But we need to understand, are our police force and the efficiencies that we expect of an agency being met? There was supposed to be an audit done 3 or 4 years ago to answer that question. I believe in data. I believe trying to understand before you answer the question whether you need more police or less, are our police right now working as efficiently as they can? Let's be straight. It's been a hard time to be a police officer. We have attrition. We have a lot of people who've left the police force, just like a lot of employment all over the country. We do have to be mindful of that, because when workforces are attrition and people are working overtime and strained, it becomes a lot harder to do the hard work of any agency like the police. But I'd like to see that analysis done as to whether or not our MPD is as efficient as it can or should be before I answer a question about whether we need more or less.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Attorney Schwab that we need an audit, I think, to answer this question. I think it's an arbitrary question, though. I'm not faulting your question, but it's an arbitrary issue. Should the number be X versus Y, particularly without that kind of a look? But also, sure, if response times are going down, yes, or going up, then yes, that would tell you need more police. But we need to do other things as well. We need to be making sure that we're providing the types of mental health counseling that keeps people from getting into trouble in the first place, substance abuse counseling, economic opportunity, addressing housing instability. And so I think it's a false choice between police on the one hand and public safety on the other hand. I think you need both in order to achieve public safety. The last thing I'll say is that we incarcerate more people in this country, 6 times more than any other Western democracy, and yet we're less safe. So ultimately, the only way to achieve a solution is to do these other things as well. Thank you.
Thank you. These, again, are questions coming from our community members and our audience members. And in the same vein, I do want to talk a bit more just about police. Same audience member asked, do you support police in our schools, and do you support offering incentives for more officers to join the force? So one, do you support police in our schools, and do you support adding incentives? And let's just do this as a rapid fire. I think we could answer those questions in a fairly short 30-second response. I'll start with you, Mr. Spiva. Do you support police in our schools? And do you support offering incentives for folks to join MPD, such as housing supplements and signing bonuses? And I'll give you 30 seconds each to answer those questions.
I think with the question of police in schools, our ultimate goal ought to be that we don't need police in schools. I do think it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, that this ought to be community-based. The community and the school ought to have the option, if they feel the need, to have police in their schools, because I have talked to people who feel that way. But we also have to make sure that the police are trained correctly so they aren't traumatizing kids by their presence in the schools. And with respect to, can you remind me the second question?
The second question was incentives for folks to join MPD.
I support that.
And I'll give you 15 out of...
I'll give you a short answer, yes.
Okay, sounds good. It was a 2-part question. 30 seconds is a little tight. So we'll give you 40-ish or so, okay? I'll wrap you up when I see you
when I need you.
Wandering. When you need me. Go ahead, question number, do you support hiring more police officers in the schools, and how about incentives?
Look, I think it's really hard to be a high schooler in the best of circumstances, or a middle schooler. We all maybe remember those days, how hard it is. And being in fear on the way to school or being in fear in school is it's going to make it even harder to be a student. That's the reality. We also have a reality that our current DC Council has already decided that we are going to step down the number of resource officers and police in school. In fact, we're going to be down to 0. We're going to be down to 0 in 5 years, and that's the voice of our community. I think what we really need to do is focus on the root causes of why kids are either falling out of school or falling into trouble at school, instead of always responding with more police, more security officers, and tamping down kids. Kids shouldn't feel like they're criminals walking into a school. That deters the ability to learn. As far as incentives, I think police officers, as well as mental health professionals, nurses, we need more working folks to be able to afford to live in our city. And if we got to give incentives, not just to police, but to mental health therapists and teachers and nurses, then yes, I think we should do that.
Okay, that's your time. Thank you. Mr. Jones, same two questions.
I say these are our children that we're sending to and from school that we have to keep safe. And what does that look like? It's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and people need to feel safe, and sometimes having a police officer there makes people feel safe. On the other side of the token is having a police officer in a school that then disturbs the children and prevents them from having a good learning situation that puts them on a track to have a better life. And I think that's what we all want. So we have to make smart decisions over and over and do hard work. Put your hands into the soil, figure it out. Figure out what these communities need and not come with answers, but come with answers that work for the questions that you guys have for us. We're here to serve you. If this is what you need, this is what we will give you, okay? Should we incentivize police to be hired here in Washington, D.C.? Yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the lively discussion, and we all want you to give us your feedback. But let's respect the candidates who are here so we can all hear their answers to these very important questions that all of you do have. So let's move on with a question here. What responsibility should parents bear when their children commit serious and/or violent crimes such as drug distribution, carjacking, violent assaults, attempted murder, etc.? For example, if a child is engaged in a drug trade and the parents accept monetary or other benefits from the child knowing the juvenile is not gainfully employed or not able to otherwise afford such items, will you hold adults responsible who use juveniles in the furtherance of criminal activity? We saw this on a national scale where in one case when there was a school shooting, the parents were held responsible, and that was unprecedented at the point, right, at the time. So what would you do for parents who are engaging in some ways with their children's criminal activity? And we've seen these youth carjackings on the rise, and we're about to get into summer, so we need some real solutions. I'll start with Mr. Spiva.
Well, short answer on when the parents are actually involved in the criminal activity, they should be prosecuted and they should go to jail. Now, I do want to make sure everybody knows that the AG's office does not have control over adult felony prosecutions. I think it should. That will be a goal of mine, along with statehood, by the way. I'm a longtime fighter for D.C. statehood. We should control prosecution of all of our local felonies, but all of our local crimes. I think, though, the focus when we're talking about our children and serious crimes is how do we keep them from getting into that kind of trouble in the first place, providing all those kinds of wraparound services, and if they do, making sure that in the long term we get them back on the right track. And so that may mean a system where we are able to hold them longer and provide them those wraparound services and have appropriate accountability, not in an adult prison, let me emphasize, but where we hold them longer than we can now. And that may require some legislation, but that's something that I'm going to try to pursue to try to address this. I think that's where our focus ought to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schwab, same question. What responsibility should parents bear, and how would you hold them accountable?
There's no question that oftentimes it's a parent or a guardian or an older sibling or an uncle or an aunt that first sees the warning signs in a young person. And we do want to make sure that everybody in our community is engaged. We don't want to have a prosecutor, an AG, or a U.S. attorney deal with it. We don't want the police to have to deal with it. We obviously would like the family and the community to deal with it. There was a time, I remember, when I was getting out of line, somebody in the community would grab my ear and say, "You got to get back in line." We all are in this together. I don't like the idea of criminalizing parenting. It is already very, very hard for so many people to raise their kids, to raise their grandkids, to start thinking about criminalizing that hard work. We need to be mindful, though, for example, in our juvenile justice system now, there are orders that come down when somebody gets into trouble that requires the parents to engage. There's a court order that says, Mom, Dad, you need to be involved in your kids' work, school, whatever it is. And when parents don't follow the rules of a court and they're in contempt of a court, of course, I think we have to hold them accountable. But I don't like the idea of broadly criminalizing parenting or grandparenting, uncling, and aunting.
Thank you. Mr. Jones. Same question, 1 minute.
out getting petition signatures, somebody confronted me and said, this is what you ought to do. I'm listening to that person for the very first time, hearing them say, hold the parents accountable. They know better than anyone else that they don't have a job, they can't afford this stuff that they are bringing into the homes, and they're also benefiting from it. So you hold them accountable so you deter these crimes from happening which are affecting our communities. This is what I heard, right? And I hear my colleagues say important things that I agree with. And how we hold people accountable to make sure our cities are safe is something that we have to revitalize. And that's why you're asking us to step to the plate and figure it out for you. Half of the room is agreeing that you should hold parents accountable, while the other half is saying that's nonsense. How do we keep our cities safe? How do we hold the actors accountable? And how do we put people on a track to be productive members of society? There's a design feature that we're all suffering with, many of us here. And we have to eradicate that so we're not talking about this. And that's why I'm running.
Thank you. There was a question from the audience referring to the recent report of results concerning police. What's the date and who completed it? It was the Police Reform Committee. The commission released, I think, 90 recommendations or so to reimagine policing, and this was after the death of George Floyd. So it's online. The full report is there at the D.C. Council. You can look that up. Police Reform Commission, full report, D.C. Council. You can look at all the recommendations. That was released April 2021. Let's continue talking about our young people. And this is a very crucial issue that's happening here, especially, unfortunately, in communities here in Ward 8. How would you help save the youth from the rapid increase of opioid overdoses in our community? Mr. Jones, I'll start with you.
You know, this is a big problem. Why are folks needing to use drugs in the first place? Okay? Then, when they are using drugs, are we doing everything that we can to keep them safe? You hear about these safe use sites. We hear about other things that are creative measures in order to stem or make sure that people aren't dying and overdosing. But we have people selling drugs. They're not scientists. They don't know what they're giving folks. They're just trying to make some money. It's an awful design that's been created, which is now being exacerbated, and it's leaving people dead. If they're dying from the drugs, they're dying from the gun violence that enforces the sale of drugs. They're dying from being put in jail because they sold drugs. And we're all dealing with the effects of it, all of us. And it doesn't just stay here in one area. It spreads out throughout the city. So until we start putting programs in place and changing the way institutions operate, you're going to continue to see these problems, and us as attorney generals aren't going to be the ones that fix it. So you have to try to meet people where they are and create the solutions now, but then make sure that they're not happening in years to come.
Thank you. That's your time. Same question, Mr. Schwab.
Look, we all see it in the paper. The overdoses from fentanyl is the largest killer of young people, 15 to 34 right now. That stat is off the charts. The amount of fentanyl that somebody has to put in their body to overdose is infinitesimally small. It's rampant. It's available on the streets. And part of that is a repeat of what we see over and over again. We talk about the crack epidemic. We talk about the guns epidemic. Now we're going to hear about the opioid epidemic. And we recycle the kinds of arguments that are too often law and order. Law is going to arrest people, put people in jail, stamp this stuff out, and it doesn't work. We always have to go back to what are the root causes of why these types of behaviors are happening. Why are people using drugs? Why are the drugs available? And get to those root causes. For me, I'm never going to give up on kids in D.C. One of the greatest privileges of being the Attorney General is not to wait for kids to get in trouble so you can prosecute them, but to advocate for kids a lot farther down the road. And this epidemic of fentanyl and opioids is what is the next great crisis for our kids. And we got to all be in it together. If I told you as AG I could solve it, you guys, nobody should vote for me if I told you that. We got to all be in it together.
Okay, that's your time. Thank you. Mr. Spiva, same question, and you have 1 minute.
Sure. You know, we have a nationwide substance abuse crisis in this country, and we certainly feel the effects here in D.C. as well. But it's not new. Isn't it interesting that folks have started to notice deaths from substance abuse, the opioid crisis, when it came to Appalachia, where the white folks were dying of it as well. All of a sudden, people are recognizing that we need to actually fully treat substance abuse. All of a sudden, folks are recognizing that we need to have broad, available mental health counseling. And what else do we need? We need to deal with housing instability. We need to deal with economic insecurity. We need to deal with our education system and the hopelessness that too often flows from that. These are hard issues. They're complicated issues. They're deep problems, and they affect our community. But that's the way we ultimately solve it. We have to address those root causes of this drug problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have about 3 minutes left in our debate before we head over to closing remarks. So I want to go to a question that we received from an online audience member. Would you require your attorneys to participate in restorative programs? And we'll start with, I'll switch it up. We'll start with Mr. Schwab.
You got a minute for this or 30 seconds?
1 whole minute.
60 seconds. All right. We should be very proud for a lot of reasons of our current Attorney General's office, and one of the reasons we should be proud of it is we are the only prosecutor's office in the country that has a restorative justice program in the office of the prosecutor. That is very, very important because for so many reasons our criminal justice system doesn't always work in resolving the hard issues that come to it. For example, when cases can't get made because the evidence is bad, the witnesses go bad, if you either are a prosecutor that says, I'm either going to prosecute or drop the case, you lose an opportunity for closure, for the agreement that can be reached through a restorative justice process. Too often victims, families of violence are not given voice in our criminal justice system, particularly our juvenile justice system. Restorative justice allows victims and their families to have a voice, for people to get to an agreement as to what happened and how are we going to make sure it doesn't happen again, for real empathy to be shown and for an agreement to be reached, because that in the long run is what we want to do, is break cycles of trauma, retaliation, violence, trauma, retaliation, violence. And restorative justice is showing the promise of that in Washington. And I will look for ways to expand it to more violent crimes than the current low-level crimes it's being used in.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jones?
Can I have a question again?
Sure. Would you require your attorneys to participate in restorative justice programs?
Absolutely. So a senior came to me. She said one of her neighbors walked up to her, knocked her down, and she suffered an injury. And now she's dealing with an assault matter, saying, how are you going to help me step to the plate, things of that nature. Now you're talking about a senior, somebody that's in their 70s. What would you want to have happen to that gentleman that knocked her over? What would be justice in that situation? What would you want to do? I don't have the answer, right? So a restorative justice program, you're not going to try to go and lock up a senior for knocking her down, but you can go into a restorative justice program like the one that's been set up and allow them to sit across the table from one another, agree and resolve their problem in an amicable way, right? She feels seen, she feels protected by her government, and this gentleman knows not to enter into that type of conduct again with any of their neighbors. That's one issue. But then we have young folks dealing with it. And we want to make sure that they don't re-engage in violence or, engage in carjackings. And we got to make deals so that they don't enter into this life of crime and find themselves on the margins of society. And now we're talking about all the previous questions happening again and how we're going to resolve that for them. So that's what the restorative justice program is all about, making sure that young folks aren't on the margins for the rest of their life.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Spiva, restorative justice programs.
Yes, I support the program. I think it provides an opportunity in the appropriate cases for there to be healing by the victim. It's a victim-centered program. And at the same time, real reform by the person who committed the crime if they come to understand the damage that they've done, the injury they've done to the victim. They sit down together and meet. I think we got to be careful because there's some circumstances where we don't want to re-traumatize the victim. You might have a domestic violence situation where already you have difficulty actually bringing the perpetrator to justice because they have this psychological control over the victim. So we got to be careful. But in general, I think it's a very good program and it's something that I would support. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last question combines a few issues here. One of my own question that I came with, and then some from the community members that I see. This race started with 4 candidates, and Kenyon McDuffie is no longer on the ballot. Ron Moten, who was a prominent business and community leader here in Ward 8, penned a post opinion calling the Attorney General race a state of emergency, and said that there should have been a little more interpretation into the law, allowing a D.C. native, a black son of D.C., to serve and to run for his candidacy in his own city. So I'd like to take some time and give you each a minute to talk about how you think that move, that strategic move that occurred within this race, how do you think that's perceived by the community? And I'll start with Mr. Spiva.
Thank you for the question. I think the community is not a monolith. I've talked to many people about this. I've reached out to Councilmember McDuffie and many of his supporters, and I understand that he and many of his supporters are disappointed, and I understand that kind of frustration. I've lost cases before. I've had personal disappointments before, so I understand that. But I brought that challenge in good faith because I believed, although he's a dedicated public servant who's done a lot of good things on the council, that he didn't meet the minimum eligibility requirements. The Board of Elections and the Court of Appeals that heard it unanimously agreed with me. So now I'm moving on, and I want to tell you why I would make an extremely qualified person to hold this office based on my 30 years of service to the people, fighting for civil rights, voting rights, consumer protection. And that's the kind of experience that I'm going to bring to the job to try to make things better for folks who've been left out and left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spiva. Mr. Schwab, how do you think the removal of Kenyon McDuffie from the ballot is interpreted by these community members? What do you think it means?
Well, I'm a first-time candidate, and I had a conversation with my 3 daughters and my wife, Mickey, before I got into this race, and what we talked about was we wanted to lead a campaign and run a campaign consistent with my values, where we elevate, where we talk about issues, and we try to get away from the division that's too much a part of our political conversation. We have a huge competitive advantage in Washington, D.C. because we don't have the red versus blue problem that communities have across the country, where they can't even get in a room and talk about things they disagree with. We don't have that problem. We do have divisions, though, in our city. And I think that when we are politicians and we're engaged in the process, we should be thinking about minimizing divisions and bringing us together. And I thought that the process was a divisive one. I was aware of the arguments. I exercised judgment in my campaign without knowing whether it was strategically in my interest, just like my decision to be a fair election candidate at the beginning of this race was not made with any sort of understanding as to what the tactics would be, but trying to do the right thing. I hope we can get past this. I hope that we can be a city that becomes united on issues, because we need to be together to fight these really tough issues that affect all of us in Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Schwab. Mr. Jones.
This is a tough situation to address. It's very unfortunate what has occurred, and I'm very sorry for Kenyon and his supporters and the people who wanted to give him a shot to represent Washington, D.C. I look at my colleagues, a very sharp attorney, a very sharp attorney. These guys know the issues, and they can advocate zealously on your behalf just as he could. And they've stuck out here, and we have real problems that we're talking about. We have real issues to still resolve, whether Kenyon McDuffie's on the ballot or not. And to sit back at home and be sad and disappointed is a mistake. You better step to the plate, because this is the 3 people that are up here. And these are solid attorneys, and they're good people at heart. He did what a lawyer did. And you have the opportunity to fight, and that's what he revealed. And this is what we're dealing with now. So I would say, educate yourself, educate yourself, educate yourself. It's not a state of emergency. You have 3 quality attorneys before you, and you have a crucial decision to make by June 21st. All right? Now let's move forward.
Thank you. And with that, that closes out our debate. Give these candidates a round of applause. And so We will now offer a 1-minute closing remark to each of our candidates. And we will take a break. I know you've been sitting for a while, but if you can give us your attention for about 3 more minutes, that's all we need. If the audience can just quiet down and we can give our attention and respect to these candidates who've given their time and really answered some very difficult questions that I think were important to a lot of folks who are here. So, Mr. Spiva, your 1-minute closing remark.
Thank you so much. You know, a great Washingtonian whose house is not too far from here, Frederick Douglass, once said that power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. When we see an injustice, we have a moral obligation not to walk away, but to fight to try to change it. That is the reason we were put on this earth. And that's why I've been fighting for 30 years for civil rights and voting rights, consumer protection. I want to fight for housing justice. I want to fight for criminal justice reform. I want to fight for consumer protection. I want to fight for environmental justice. These are not issues that just came along for me during this election season. These are the types of things that I've been fighting for and winning on behalf of the people for 30 years. So if you want a leader who is ready to walk up the rough side of the mountain for you, and to inspire others to join us, choose me. I'm eager and ready to do the job. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schwab. Folks, please, just a couple of more minutes, please. We need to move quickly so we can get to our mayoral debate. Mr. Schwab, you have the floor.
One thing I think everybody who lives in Washington should be proud of is the state of our current Attorney General's office. Under Karl Racine's leadership, the first independently elected AG in our city's history, we have an Attorney General's office that is a premier AG office, recognized across the country as one of the top state AGs. The level of talent, the level of hardworking professionals and lawyers that are working in that office fighting every day for us, we should feel good about that. I'm very, very proud that the 700 full-time equivalents and that $150 million budget a year, that office that serves all of us so well, its current leader, Karl Racine, has endorsed me as the next Attorney General. I'm also proud that the Attorney General before him, Irv Nathan, has also endorsed me. Those two gentlemen approach the job very differently. They may not agree on very much, but one thing they agree on is that the experience of lawyering for 30 years, trying everything from death penalty cases in Alabama to billion-dollar civil cases and everything in between, leading large teams of lawyers, hundreds of professionals, managing a large budget, and coming in independent is critical to the job of the AG. It's a hard job. We've got hard questions before us, but we need somebody on day one who brings the skills, the experience, and the heart to fight for all of us in D.C. and our city, and I hope you'll get behind me. I hope I'll earn your support, and if you want to find out more about me, it's Brian with an I, FORDC.com, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, your 1-minute closing remarks.
2020 revealed a lot of the problems that we have in our society. It highlighted all of them, and it exacerbated them. It hit the communities in harder ways than in others. And I decided we needed to step up to provide new leadership and provide new vision to cure these age-old problems. I know that we need to rewire a system in order to uplift and empower people. I put it right on the back of these shirts. And it's important that I say that because when I go in all of these courtrooms, I know what it's like. I've been in the Court of Appeals. I've been in federal district court. I've been in D.C. Superior, civil, criminal, landlord-tenant, small claims, been before the Office of Administrative Hearings, and being successful. I've been before the current Office of Attorney General, and I haven't lost. It's just a fact. And I came to this point to say I need to step up and help more people. That's why I'm running. I'm tired of seeing the things that we've seen throughout history. And if we don't have leaders that step up and make a change, it's not going to change. We need us to protect us. And that's why I'm running. I hope I can earn your vote and support and recognize that I'll stand to the plate for you every day and do just that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Neighbors, another round of applause for our candidates for Attorney General here in the District of Columbia. Thank you. I'll turn it back to Troy.
Sure. Well, as a memento, make sure you tag us on Wardate Dems with your name tag. All right, are we still here? I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Are you in the house? What you think about the last debate? Yeah? Okay. That was good, right? Yeah, so we're moving to, thank you. I have an amen choir here. So listen, I just want to make sure that everyone is getting a chance to meet your neighbors. So please, if you don't know the person you're sitting beside, say, hey, neighbor. Get to know your neighbor. Get to know your Wardate Atonians here in Fellowship Hall. Okay, so listen, we are in the home stretch, and I have a few reminders. I'm going to thank the candidates once again. If you want to interact with the candidates, they're going to be right outside that door. Right outside that door, Mr. Schwab. Let's get Mr. Schwab outside the door so folks can talk to him there. Okay. All right, so listen, a couple of housekeeping things. Okay, I need everyone's attention. Need everyone's attention. If you beside someone talking, say, can you be in charge of quiet for me? Can you be in charge of quiet? Yep, that was what my teacher did to me all the time. Okay, thank you. So we are getting ready to transition to our next forum here. We're going to do some COVID protocols real quick, and then we're going to get ready. But while I have you, earlier, if you missed this part, we did talk about that this is Mental Health Month, and it's it's important that you check on your strong friends. Of course, the pandemic, as you know, has taken a toll on everyone, and of course, the recession, or not the recession, but the inflation isn't helping. So, all right. If I could have my team escort those who are speaking outside of the room. Just ask them to just step outside the room for me. It's okay that you're talking. We just need quietness inside of the room. Thank you. I know Regina's on it, so. You don't want Regina to come tap you on your shoulder, so. Okay. As I was saying, that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Check on your strong friends, folks. The pandemic has taken a toll. Also, what about you? If you are having difficulty coping, I want you to do a couple of things for me. Breathe and know that you're not alone. And I'm going to ask that Darrell, if you can direct those folks outside of the room for me. Yeah. Thank you. Candidate Jones, if you could take the conversation out the room. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Listen, the DC Department of Behavioral Health has a lot of resources. You can call 1-888-7-WE-HELP or 1-888-793-4357. This is the easiest way that you can reach staff behavioral health professionals who can refer you to immediate help, and ongoing care. So again, that number is 1-888-7-WE-HELP or 1-888-793-4357. We know we've been talking about mental health. This is the time to take down these important numbers so that you can share them with your family members, with your neighbors, with yourself. Again, 1-888-7-WE-HELP or 1-888-793-4357. Once again, we want to thank our sponsors who helped us today. This forum is being brought to you in part by the DC Democratic Party. I want to talk very briefly as we prepare to bring up the next group of candidates about voting. There will be 40 vote centers open across the district during the early vote period. How many of you guys have already gotten your ballot in the mail? Yes? Okay, that looks like most of you. For those of you who haven't gotten your ballot, keep checking that mailbox for the next couple of weeks. They're still sending out ballots. If you do not receive your ballot, you can go to a vote center, one of these 40 vote centers, early vote centers, that will be open on June 10th through June 19th. And then there will be 90 vote centers open on Election Day, Tuesday, June 21st. But Ward 8, we want to get all of ours in early. And on top of that, you can take any of your ballots that you received in the mail, you could take it to a drop box. You don't have to put it in the mail. In fact, I advise you not to put it in the mail the closer we get to Election Day. Put it in one of the drop boxes, and there'll be 55 of those across the district. Now, on these screens in front of you, there are, you'll see rotating through locations for where you will see the early vote centers, their time, their dates, as well as the Election Day centers and the drop boxes located here in Ward 8. Snap a picture of it. Those of you online, you can look through online materials and see it as well. So make sure that you take a chance. If you don't know, if you're curious about where you're going to vote, we have it scrolling up here on the screen. And just so that we're clear, you can vote at any vote center. You don't have to just vote at the one near you. You can go to anyone in the city. But these are the ones that are here in Ward 8. You'll see those on your screen. Okay? One more piece of housekeeping material. In lieu of the endorsement this year, the Ward 8 Democrats is conducting the online straw poll. You can, again, go to tinyurl.com/Ward8poll, or you can scan, if you're in-house here, you can scan the QR code, take you right there. If you need help, we're here to help. If you need help, we are here to help right here in person. So if you still have about an hour to get down here if you're watching us online, if you need help. Otherwise, we're going to ask that you go to it online, which is tinyurl.com/Ward8poll. Mr. At-Large Rep, could you be in charge of quiet for me back there? I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, former President Jacques Patterson. Okay. So, once again, we are conducting this online poll. If you will go there, you can cast your vote about who you believe should, who you think won the debate, who has your heart. The main thing here is to vote. Again, this poll is for Ward 8 Democratic voters only. You have to be a registered Ward 8 Democratic voter only. If you are not a Ward 8 registered Democratic voter, do not take this poll. This is not for you. You should go to your ward and take their poll if they have one. But if you are a Ward 8 Democratic voter, we ask that you take the poll here, okay? So, again, Ward 8 poll, you can go to the website right now. You can also go to tinyurl.com/Ward8poll, or you can scan one of these QR codes here. Oh, very important, raffle tickets. Easy, folks, easy, easy, easy. Regina, can you be in charge of quiet over there for me? Thank you. All right, easy, folks, easy, easy. So listen, there is a raffle ticket, that a contest that we're doing right now. How many of you received the raffle ticket? Okay, we're going to call that raffle. If you haven't received your raffle ticket, step up at the registration desk. Make sure you sign in. Dolores is waving her hand so people can see where to go. And you can register. You can get your raffle ticket there. It doesn't cost you anything. We're going to give away a nice little surprise in the end. So thank you as a gift for sticking with us all this time. Okay, did I miss anything? Oh, be respectful. Please be respectful of our guests. They are the guests of the Ward 8 Democrats. This is for everyone. They are the guests of the Ward 8 Democrats. We have invited them here because we believe that Ward 8 Democratic voters want to hear about their policy proposals. So we need, I'm still hearing talking on this side. If people are talking, that means you can't hear me. And what I'm telling you is very important. So I need for there to be quiet in the room. If you must talk, you can go right outside and you can talk until your heart's content. But inside the room is getting to what we're talking about right now, which is that we want to be respectful of the candidates who are here today. We've heard some outbursts. We're asking you to be respectful and be mindful that they're here as our guests. And if you disagree with them, then you go to the polls and you express your disagreement. But while we're in here, we want to at least be mindful that they are invited to be here. So we want to thank all of them for coming. And did I miss anything else? Talking to my super executive committee member, Barbara. What? Oh, if you have a question, if you have questions, you can use the hashtag #WardAteVotes. You can also, if you're online, you can also wave your hand and we can give you an index card. You can fill it out and we'll collect it and we'll give it to the moderator. And then it was at the moderator's discretion if that question gets asked or not. Just want to be clear. We don't make the final decision. The moderator does. So, all right, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next and final forum, which is on the mayor. And we want to do a quick COVID change here, and then we'll be right. All right, so give us 1 second. Is it still sticking around?
Hey, neighbors. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. We're resetting. Good afternoon to the folks here in person, all you lovely faces, and our neighbors who are watching online. I'm Delia Gonzalez from WUSA 9, and I'll be moderating this afternoon's debate. Couple of housekeeping notes, and we're just going to run through the order of the debate before we invite our candidates to the stage to begin a very lively and important discussion this afternoon. So I will ask a few questions initially, but as we said before, this forum really is all about you. It is for you, and while we are asking that everyone show a little respect to the folks who are here, we want your voices to be heard. So if you have questions, you are given a index card. Please write down your questions on that index card. We did a really great job last debate getting to nearly every question that came to the podium. Folks who are online, you could also put your question in the chat or use the hashtag #WardAteVotes. Someone as well will be monitoring that and will hand your question to me, and we will do our very best to get to your question. So each candidate will be given 1 minute for an opening statement. We will start with 1-minute responses, and perhaps if we move closer to the end of our debate, we will shorten our responses to 30 seconds. There will also be time for rebuttal, and that will be 30 seconds as well. A candidate, again, if you are named directly in the response of an opposing candidate, you will have an opportunity to rebut for 30 seconds. Now we turn to the mayoral candidates. The mayor is the head of the executive branch of the D.C. government. The mayor has the duty to enforce district laws and the power to either approve or veto bills passed by the D.C. Council. The mayor is elected to a 4-year term every non-presidential election year, and there are 4 candidates on the ballot for the Democratic primary, and we have all 4 here this afternoon. So let's meet our candidates. Mayor Murial Bowser. James Butler. Trayon, Washington, D.C. White. And Robert White. We're playing a bit of musical chairs up here. I should have followed and taken a look at the cards before calling you up. Thank you, candidates, for being here. I know we're running a little behind schedule, so we're going to dive right in. We're going to start with your 1-minute opening statements. Again, we're going to follow up with 1-minute responses to the questions, 30-second rebuttals. And I will start with Mr. Butler, who is to my right. 1-minute opening remark.
Good afternoon, Ward 8. I think we are off. Now we're prepped. Good afternoon, Ward 8. Thank you all for coming today. Madam Moderator, we thank you. Ward 8 Dems, we thank all that you do to further the ends of spreading information and the ends of democracy. As was mentioned, I am James Butler, and I am running to be D's next mayor. I am a proud Washingtonian. I am equally as proud to be the only non-career politician running for the office of mayor. I'm a former ANC residing in Ward 5. I'm also a former civil rights lawyer. Folks, I have sued state governments, city governments, counties. I have learned how government works. I also, as an ANC, I learned where the fault lines and problems lie. Folks, I am running against 3 people who currently receive government money for a salary and also for their campaigns. I have appealed to voters that we need to change and clean house. If you do more of the same, you will get more of the same. That is why I am asking for your vote on June 21st. And you can learn more at butler4dc.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Mr. Robert White, 1 minute.
Good afternoon, Ward 8. I'm Robert White. I'm a 5th-generation Washingtonian, a husband, a father, and an at-large council member. Growing up, I was a young person who was counted out. When I was 8 years old, I lost my mom to breast cancer, and just a few weeks after that was in a near-fatal car accident that pushed me so far behind in school that I failed every grade from 3rd to 10th grade. But 10 years after my high school guidance counselor told me I wouldn't go to college, I was a lawyer sitting beside Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton on Capitol Hill fighting for district residents. To go from where I was to where I am now, I had to learn how to become a problem solver, and that is the skill set that I've used to deliver for D.C. residents. I passed the most sweeping early childhood education legislation in the country, made the District of Columbia the first jurisdiction in the nation to restore voting rights to all incarcerated people, and I've helped Ward 8 businesses buy their buildings so that they wouldn't be displaced. What we need now is a mayor who is a problem solver. Crime is through the roof. People can't afford to live in our city, and black and brown students are behind in droves in our school. I am ready to lead our city on day 1. That's why I'm asking for your vote to be the next mayor of our great city.
Ms. Bowser, 1 minute.
Well, hello, Democrats. It is great to see you all here, and it's always great to be in Ward 8. I am so grateful to you for your support, and I'm asking you for your support again. When we were here in 2014, we were talking about what we needed to do in our city to make sure that investments that were happening in every part of the city were also happening right here in Ward 8. I've been proud that our administration has been able to make real investments in Ward 8 schools, in Ward 8 recreation centers, in bringing fresh food and grocery to Ward 8, the first ever economic development investment that will bring workers, hotel, and jobs to Ward 8. What people told me 8 years ago was that they would not support somebody who was just here at election time asking for their vote, but would show up on the tough issues and would make the investments that would put people back to work and put people in quality housing. And that's what we have been able to do these last 8 years. Now, our challenge in the next 4 years is to come back from this pandemic.
Mayor, that's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trayon White.
So my name is Trayon White, and I'm a proud representative on the D.C. City Council representing Ward 8. Is Ward 8 in the House? And so my political career started with the Ward 8 Democrats, so I want to thank you. What I know as a young man growing up in this city, that most people that look like me, talk like me, walk like me, don't make it out. And so instead of me complaining about the problems, my job was to create a solution. I learned from Mr. William Lockridge a long time ago that the people who need the resources the most are not at the table. And so, as a council member, I argue back and forth with this administration about basic resources and city services for everyday residents. And like some of the commissioners know, we put in tickets to get services done, and they close the ticket out, but the job is still not done. And so my solution is don't just stand there, do something. And so we know that in the last 10 years, education has not gotten better, public safety has not gotten better, our health care has not gotten better, and so it's about us creating a cooperative solution to address these issues. So as mayor, we're going to win this thing, and we're going to put people over politics.
That's your time. Thank you. Okay, these questions are coming directly from our audience members. We received index cards that folks just wrote their questions on. We're encouraging folks online to do so as well. One housekeeping note from our audio tech: if you candidates can keep your microphone off until you are called upon to speak, I think that will help with some feedback that he's receiving. Thank you so much. So our first question, and I will start with Mr. Butler to my right, and we will go down the line. Would you approve an east of the river budget that allocates a budget specifically for Wards 7 and 8 that serves to address the more critical and nuanced needs of our neighbors here? Mr. Butler, 1 minute.
And thank you, Madam Moderator. I have answered this question before, and my answer, and I promised the voters early on in this election that I will not equivocate on what I will answer very directly and unequivocally. Yes, I would. Ward 8 has been left too far behind. We have a mayor that talks about she's going to pay the attention to Ward 8 as she does the other city, but we know when a shooting happens uptown, we see the podium come out. We know when it happens all the time here east of the river. Ask her how much she's paying attention to that. We need a mayor that's going to do the tough stuff in democracy and finally pay attention to east of the river. And I'm that man.
Thank you. Ms. Bowser, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to rebut since you were directly mentioned.
I don't want to directly rebut Mr. Butler, but I want to say this. I've talked to too many mothers, been on too many crime scenes, and I've been, unfortunately, on those crime scenes in all 8 wards. And the devastation that gun violence is playing in our city, we can make political hay out of it. But what I'd rather do is make sure that our police department has the resources it needs, that our prevention programs are in place and actually working, that we're prosecuting violent gun offenders and drug dealers so that we have safe neighborhoods across the District of Columbia. What we should all be talking about is ending needing to go to any crime scene to stand over a child or a person that has been murdered in our city. And that has to be our collective focus.
Mr. White, would you approve a specific budget for Ward 7 and 8?
What I hear from residents every single day in Ward 7 and 8 is that they feel forgotten, and that is because we are decades behind on investments in Ward 7 and 8. We don't need a specific budget in Ward 7 and 8. I'm going to be a mayor who makes it clear to our entire city that our entire budget is going to focus on catching up Ward 7 and 8, from transportation to attracting businesses to improving our schools. What we need in this city is a mayor who will stand up to the rest of the city and say, look, I'm going to settle expectations. In this time right now, when we have the money, the resources to do for Ward 7 and 8 what we have not done over the past 40 years, that is going to be our priority. When people across our city hear that from their mayor, they're going to want to be part of that solution. So we're going to improve schools in Ward 8. We're going to improve transportation. We're going to bring amenities. We're going to bring more workforce housing, not use Ward 7 and 8 as the dumping ground for everything that the rest of the city doesn't want, but help you catch up to where the rest of the city is.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Bowser?
I would just say, I know that members of the council, Councilmember Robert White specifically, has attempted to take funds out of Ward 7 and 8. He did it first with the streetcar, and Councilmember Gray can attest to this, and had to fight to keep the funds in so that we could extend the current, where it stops currently in the middle of the street, to a metro station. Right now, he's circulating among the council members an attempt to take money out of the food access fund. And we have used this food access fund to build groceries in Ward 8, to break ground on the first grocery store in Ward 7 that's been built in 20 years at Skyland, and also to bring sit-down restaurants to Ward 7 and 8. So before we even start talking about a specific budget for Ward 7 and 8, oh, I also didn't mention how the council has set the timeline for how schools get improved. And we know that our Ward 8 schools are behind every other ward in having those funds allocated. So before we talk about having a specific Ward 7 and 8 budget, we need to make sure that the members of the council are doing for Ward 7 and 8 right now, and keep the funds that I put in there for the food access fund.
Mr. Robert White, I'll give you 30 seconds.
Thank you. Mayor Bowser visited Potomac Gardens Public Housing earlier this week, and the residents had something to say to her about the conditions there. What I tried to take streetcar money for was for improving public housing. The mayor said, no, don't do that. Let's build a streetcar. I say the most urgent thing is dignified housing. Right now, what I'm trying to do is create a mental health pipeline for our young people. So if I need to take it from a slush fund, I'm going to take it from a slush fund, because our kids need somebody who's going to be focused on their mental health and intensely focused on our communities, not this gimmick stuff that's going to help you win elections, but real stuff that's going to move communities forward.
Delia, I'm the mayor. You said the mayor.
I think we do have to move on. I think we did have ample time to discuss. You said you could rebut. Okay, folks. I love a lively debate. I love y'all's spirit. And these rapid fire questions, we're getting a lot of questions so far on from the audience. So I appreciate being engaged in our process here. Mr. Trayon White, you have 1 minute. Would you allocate a specific budget towards 7 and 8?
Yes, and I do want to say that this budget has not been equitable. Part of the conversation for the last 10 generations has been equality. We passed the conversation about equality, we're talking about equity. I sat on the council when we received the budget from the mayor, and 15 schools in Ward 8 was underfunded. I put that money back in the budget. I sat on the council when we ran the narrative that crime was down for 6 years, and we had $0 in the budget. I put the additional $750,000 in the budget for crime prevention. I sat on the council when we did the food justice walk. We had one grocery store. serving 80,000 people on the council. I organize and make sure we push the mayor and other council members to put money in the budget for equity grocery stores. And so it's not about what I'm going to do, it's about what I've already been doing. Proven leadership in Ward 8.
Mayor Bowser, would you like your 30 seconds?
I would like my 30 seconds because I want to make it very clear, and I'm glad the council member is taking credit for the work that we have done together to bring groceries. A lot of people have promised, but I have actually delivered it. We have delivered grocery in Ward 8. We're going to deliver a brand new grocery in Ward 7, and we have brought sit-down restaurants to neighborhoods in Ward 7 and 8. And I want to be real clear about my commitment to public housing because we have invested $50 million every single year to transform units of public housing. So it's not good enough to say, when you work with a $19 billion budget, that people who have been waiting for connected transportation can't get it. We have to be able to do both. We have to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Our next question goes to Mr. Butler. As this ward is largely a food desert in the city, what's your plan to increase access to healthy and affordable foods immediately? We need immediate plans in regards.
Thank you so much. If Sharon Pratt Kelly was here today, she'd be calling my opponents 3 blind mice. Now, they have been here a number of years, and we're still talking about these problems, food shortage. The mayor, in one of our first debates of the season, bragged about how there were 2 grocery stores in Ward 7. So, you know, we've got a lot of problems by doing more of the same, and I've shared this with the voters. If you do more of the same, you're going to get more of the same. My plan is this. We will rely on services like Uber, to deliver foods to those seniors that need it. We will also rely on services like Meals on Wheels for seniors that need it. In addition, I have talked about expanding a transportation infrastructure that Metro is entirely free for everyone, for land bus and rail buses. My opponents told me that it couldn't be done. I see I've got 15 more seconds, but I'm enthusiastic about telling you how I will bring it so that residents east of the river can transverse west of the river and get fresh food and produce.
Thank you, Ms. Bowser. Would you like 30 seconds to rebut? And I will also, if you can add in,
We are running for mayor, so if every time we use the term mayor, she gets a rebut, it's going to be a little imbalanced.
Well, it will have to be that way because I can talk about my record without talking about their records.
Okay, so let's move on. Mr. White. Folks, let's give our candidates the floor. What's your plan to increase access to healthy and affordable foods, Mr. White? 1 minute.
Thank you. We all know that access to healthy and fresh foods in Ward 7 and 8 is in desperate shape. We have got to change our paradigm. For decades, we have been chasing down large grocers who don't want to come to parts of our city. We got to stop chasing folks who don't want to come to our city. We need to focus on smaller grocers. In the 60s and 70s, that's what our city looked like. We'll pull our produce from around the region. We will hire our local residents, and we make sure our residents have access to fresh foods. We're going to use tech-enabled solutions because it's going to take time to build brick and mortar, but people need fresh foods now. So we're going to use apps that deliver groceries to get groceries more quickly to folks in our community who don't have access to transportation. But then we're also going to focus on enforcement. Folks who are gouging our residents, who are refusing to supply fresh and healthy foods, we're going to try to work with them. But if they refuse to turn the page, we're going to shut them down because our residents deserve to be able to walk down the street and get fresh foods and groceries.
Thank you, Ms. Bowser. What would you do to increase affordable foods and healthy foods here? And a question directly to you, when can we expect the Lidl grocery store to open in Ward 7?
Well, I've already talked about what we've been able to do, and the council member has referred to a model that we're using, where we have successful models of groceries, small groceries, locally owned groceries, groceries that hire DC residents, like the Good Foods Market. We want to, as the city, partner with them so that they can expand. Similarly, where we have sit-down restaurants that have done well, hire DC residents, provide different goods and places to meet, like Busboys and Poets. We want to be a partner to them so that they can expand. And now we have Busboys and Poets on Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. I think that Lido has an 18-month built out. We broke ground there a few months ago. So I think they're going to deliver mid to third quarter in 23.
Mr. Trayon White, same question, 1 minute.
What do I know? I know that we are what we eat. It's just not simply just about providing grocery stores, but also about giving the right information on what to eat. See, I grew up in this ward where we had a Murray Steaks, and for most of us, we ate steakums, hot dogs, bologna, processed food, which further exacerbated high blood pressure and diabetes. And so I've worked hard to build not only 2 more grocery options here in Ward 8, but a state-of-the-art garden here in Ward 8, right on Valley Avenue. You've never seen nothing like it in Washington, D.C. Why? Because where there's no vision, the people perish. So it's about big vision. And furthermore, I know that maybe we have some seniors who are in Ward 8 that are getting $18 a month on their food stamps, which is criminal. As mayor, my job is to work with the federal government to increase that, because they have to choose between their medicine and their food, and this is criminal. And so we started this war, but as mayor, we're going to address more solutions to create equitable education, information, and access to quality grocery options in Washington, D.C., and specifically here in Ward 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. The next question is in regards to crime in the area. There are three that I'm going to try to combine. So the question is, what are your plans to stop violence in the community east of the river? In some sites, safe passage and violence prevention programs, doing more than beyond locking up the guys with the guns. This person says you need to stop those guns from coming to our city. How do you plan to do this? So, Mr. Butler, we'll start with you. 1 minute.
Thank you. I will make D.C. one of the safest cities in America. I've said this before. I've said it on the record, and the Post has quoted me as saying this. We will have a special gun interdiction unit that we add to our police department to work with the current gun recovery unit. That gun interdiction unit will be charged with seizing all illegal guns coming into the district that would do our residents harm. In addition to that, I said that we must partner with the ATF and our federal partners, and we will. We will ensure that ghost guns are a thing of the past. Furthermore, I have shared this, that our police force is overworked. We're doing 1.1 million hours of overtime right now. That is the equivalent of hiring 500 additional police officers. These police officers are overworked. They don't believe they have a mayor that has their back. The response times are slower. In my first 4 years, I have committed to the residents of the district to bring an additional 500 to 700 police officers to interdict these illegal guns, make our streets safer, and deliver a safer D.C., becoming one of the safest cities in America.
Thank you. That's your time, sir. Thank you. Mr. Robert White, same question, 1 minute.
Thank you. First thing I'm going to do is focus our police resources on public safety. We're not going to use our police officers as a catch-all, focusing on traffic safety, mental health, noise complaints. We're going to focus them on public safety so they can be in our communities, respond, and close cases. The second thing I'm going to do is expand our violence intervention, because by the time the police have to respond, it's too late. We need to stop the violence to begin with. The third thing I'm going to do, specifically on guns, I'm going to work with law enforcement from around our region to stop guns from flowing into the District of Columbia. We're also going to work with regional prosecutors to make sure we're getting to the source of these guns that are coming into our city. On safe passage, I'm going to move this along more swiftly. My first year as a council member, I was out with Principal White here in Ward 8 doing safe passage because no one from the city was responding, so I just showed up. But we need more people from our city to be showing up. This program should be more evolved than it is. There are people across our city who want to lean in. as mayor, I'm going to give them an opportunity to lean in to keep our kids safe going to and from school so they can get the education that they deserve and focus only on that.
Thank you. That's your time. Thank you. Ms. Bowser, same question. You have 1 minute.
So we know that in neighborhoods all across D.C., public safety is a #1 issue. People are not feeling safe. Grandmas aren't feeling safe, letting their grandchildren go out to play or go to the grocery or go to church. The level of gun violence in our city is unacceptable. Our focus has been to identify people who are most likely to carry guns and use guns in our city and pour in services into them. We believe it's a small number of people, 200 up to 500 in any given year. So concentrating on them, their associates, and their families, and making sure they have access to job training, mental health, subsidized employment, we know can curb gun violence in this city. However, we have to make sure that we hold people accountable who use guns in our city, because that is the only way that we know that we can be safe. We cannot have our police force depleted by 300 a year, and we have to hire new officers.
Thank you, Ms. Bowser. Mr. Trayon White, same question.
So it was said that public safety is the #1 issue in Washington, D.C., all across the district. You have to ask yourself, why? And I'm going to tell you why. See, for the last 20-plus years, I've been going to crime scenes. In the last 8, I've been going to crime scenes only to go to meetings in the day and hear the narrative that crime is down. And you know we say in Ward 8, crime is down the street, around the corner, in our communities. And so you can't address a problem without first acknowledging the problem. You can't come to a solution without acknowledging there's a problem. And for 7 years, we had 0 money in the budget for violence prevention. I want to highlight Dwayne Wright. Dwayne Wright is an ex-offender, returning citizen who came home. And part of what I started, along with other leaders, was to create a vehicle where he can come back and be a violence interrupter in this community. Now we have over 100 of them throughout the city because we pressed the issue when people were saying that we were paying people not to commit crime. And so it's about empowering people from their community to police their own community. What I also know is Safe Passage started with the youth at Thurgood Marshall.
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry,
White.
thank you.
I'm going to follow up and continue the crime issue with another question that we had for the last debate, and again it resurfaced here. What responsibilities should parents bear when they know their young people are committing these crimes, and should we as a city or should the mayor try to hold them accountable and responsible in some ways? And I'm going to start with Trayon White.
Thank you. I want to say that all communities start in the home. But I know growing up here in Washington, D.C., specifically in Ward 8, we have a lot of broken homes. We have never fully recovered from the crack epidemic and the war on drugs that's crippled the black community here in D.C. And so we can say, we can put the ownership on the parents. Yes, parents have a level of accountability, but the whole community has a level of accountability. And we have to become the village for the young people. I see Presto over there. We go inside the schools on Fridays intervening for young people who may not have a parent or a father. Wardate has 81% single-parent households, predominantly African-American women. And so, yes, we must hold the parents accountable, but we must also hold the government accountable, because we closed down Old Rec, Hot Rec, Blue Rec, Catching Rec, number 11 Boys and Girls Club over the last 8 years. So we're going to hold the parents accountable. Let's hold the government accountable as well, and the community accountable. Thank you.
Ms. Bowser, same question, 1 minute.
I frequently say that the government can do a lot, but the government can't do it all. And we need community, we need parents, we need church, we need nonprofits, we need everybody working together. I don't believe in criminalizing parents or putting them in the CFA system when they need help. And so what our agencies are focused on, from CFSA to MPD to DHS, is making sure that we can support parents and give them the help that they need. We also hear from parents that they're at their wits' end. They may have a child that they need more help with, and they know that that child, without intervention, is going to be lost to the street, either killed or put in jail. We actually are promoting an idea for young people, juveniles, who are not justice involved yet, but on their way. And if a parent presents to us and say, we need help, we want to come up with a respite opportunity for them, and so that that parent can get some help and the child can reset.
Thank you, Ms. Bowser. Mr. Robert White, same question.
Thank you for the question. When parents have children that have committed crimes and they don't tell, they're already committing a crime. They're already aiding and abetting crime. But what we focus so much on is consequences and not enough on is prevention. We have communities that have been starved for mental health resources, starved for stronger schools, starved for jobs, starved for stable and dignified housing because of historic racism that has run rampant through our communities. And I wish we were as focused on helping communities get ahead as we are punishing them for the mistakes that have piled up over years. As mayor, you are going to see an intense focus from me on restoring and empowering our communities, getting the resources that people need to help them move ahead, supporting families so that they are building stronger every single generation, getting adult education, improving our schools so that students in your neighborhood don't have to go across town to get a good education so that they're not repeating this same cycle in the next generation. What you will see from me is a mayor who will have consequences when people make mistakes, but the heart of my work is going to be preventing those mistakes and those barriers to begin with.
Mr. White, thank you. Mr. Butler, same question. Would you hold parents accountable?
You've heard Councilman Trayon White say we should hold the government responsible too. What he failed to mention that this right here, all three of them, are a significant chunk of our present government. The mayor, and a large member, and a ward council member. Folks, I'm saying it because there ain't that many more people. You got 13 council members and a mayor. So if crime is high, if crime is historically high, it falls right at their feet. And so ask yourself, should you do more of the same? Should you do more of the same? I will absolutely hold parents accountable, and you need to ask yourself, why aren't they presently being held accountable? Ask these three. Ask these three why they aren't presently being held accountable.
Mr. Trayon White, I'll give you 30 seconds if you'd like to rebut.
So let me say this. While I appreciate Mr. Butler and his rebuttal, what I know is that every day, there's no parent I ever met that want their child out here doing wrong. And every time I talk to a parent, you know what they say? My son or daughter can't get help unless he or she is in trouble. And so we are working in partnership with our local organizations to change the trajectory of our young people here in Ward 8 and across the district. So we can talk about the problem all day, but until we create holistic solutions as early as elementary school, we're still perpetuating the school-to-prison pipeline each and every day. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to move on. A question that was submitted earlier. In D.C., there are 1 in 5 children that have a disability. There are many families that experience multiple barriers, such as accessing and retaining employment, accessing OST activities, out-of-school time activities, and sustainable housing. If elected mayor, what will your office do to help bridge these gaps, and how will you work with council to assist families caring for children with disabilities? Mr. Butler, 1 minute.
Thank you. I promised early on in this campaign that I will focus on these and folks and embellishing our Department of Disability Services. In addition, those individuals with disabilities that need affordable housing and those sorts of things, we need to ensure that we can adequately provide real, deeply affordable housing. We talk too much in this city about affordable housing that no one can afford. We need a mayor that will focus on providing deeply affordable housing by changing the law and how we calculate affordable housing, getting rid of this antiquated process of HUD's formula of calculating affordable housing and adopting our own regional formula, and also bringing things like rent control. That's how we can bridge the divide.
Follow-up question,
Sure.
Accessing school activities.
We will ensure that, one, that we communicate with all of our demographics, and excuse me that I neglected that, and also the parents, to discern where these kids, what activities they're looking for. And as mayor, I've also said that we will ensure that we always talk with the parents or our demographics that are affected to ensure that we know what they need. So what we will address the needs by learning what those needs are from the parents.
Thank you very much. Mr. Robert White, I'll give you a minute and 15 to talk about not only accessing out-of-school activities, but housing for those parents of children with disabilities.
Thank you. I meet frequently with parents who have children with disabilities. I'm the father of two little girls, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I know without a shadow of a doubt that the most important thing for parents is to have an education and extracurricular opportunities for our kids, the same as every other kid. But what I hear too frequently from parents is that it takes so long for their kids to get what's called an IEP, the assistance that they need in school. Once they get it, it's not consistently provided. This is tormenting our parents, and we can do better. But there's also the loss of dignity for our young people who can't participate in out-of-school time program because this young girl or young boy needs extra help and our city hasn't provided it. It's not that we, don't have the resources. It's that we have to be more deliberate in getting resources to students who have special needs. But we also understand that, unfortunately, caring for children with special needs is often a full-time job for parents. And so it hurts their employment opportunities. It hurts their earning opportunities. But they are focusing on the most important thing, their children and those resources. That means we have to support them more in housing. So as mayor, I'm going to meet with parents who have students with disabilities to create better and stronger supports for housing and to make sure there are no gaps in our school or out-of-school time programs.
Thank you. Ms. Bowser, 115.
Thank you, Delia. I believe that this is a space where we can do a lot better as a city to make sure all of our residents with disabilities have every opportunity that everyone else has. I'm proud that in the last 7 years, we've been able to make tens of millions of dollars in investments in our infrastructure to make sure that our public facilities are accessible, especially our recreation facilities where people go to vote in our schools. And that has actually been a long time coming. I too have spoken with parents of students with disabilities, and their big concern right now, I believe, is around out of school time. That includes after school, and that includes summer. With this budget that the council is poised to approve, we're going to be able to almost double the amount of camp spaces that we have for our kids, and I will commit to ensuring that a section of those opportunities are designated for children with disabilities. More than that, we have to look at our after-school time. Let me say, too, that the council member is right, that people need untraditional work and child care to be able to support their children with disabilities.
Thank you, Ms. Bowser. Mr. White, 115, out of school time and housing for families with disabilities.
First, I think as a government, we have to put our money where our mouth is. If you look at the Office of Disability Rights, it's one of the lowest budgets out of any government agency. And as a former manager of a nonprofit, I know we did more when we had less. Our budget grew significantly, almost $5 billion in the last 5 years. I remember the D.C. Office on Youth Investment Trust Corporation. Anybody remember that? Closed down. We had the Office of Partnerships and Grant that gave out millions of dollars and access to millions of dollars in the community. It's been reshuffled underneath Serve DC where you can't even find it anymore. And so when we have more, we have done less. And so it's not about where the money is, it's about priority. So as mayor, I will make sure that we are prioritizing and reaching those who need the resources to most. And I also heard about camp space. What I know is that the residents in Furby Hope called my office saying, we know the camp opened. As soon as we got online to apply, all the sites, all the slots were gone. And so it's about communication and having the right people in place to deliver the services to those who need it the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. White, I'm going to start with you with another question. We're going to stick with the education theme. Are you in favor of removing the D.C. public school system from mayoral control and giving power back to the elected school board? Mr. Trayon White.
So thank you. I had this question a few times. And so as mayor, I will create a hybrid system to give more power to the D.C. State Board of Education. As a former State Board of Education representative, I knew that we received our orders from OSSI, which is backwards. when we talk about leadership in the school system. I also know that we are in a place where we have switched chancellors. Since I've been in office, we had 4 chancellors, 3 chancellors, and 1 interim chancellor, and the leadership is starting over and over again. So you can't get to a goal if the leadership is changing. And so as mayor, my job is to make sure we have, 1, give relationships and credit to those State Board of Education representatives who are elected by DC, and also create a stable education system where we are focused on careers, entrepreneurship, and also college as early as middle school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Bowser, same question, mayoral control of our school system.
I favor mayoral leadership of our schools with council oversight, which is our present system, where the mayor is responsible for hiring the chancellor and making appointments to the charter school board, and the people are responsible for electing a school board that advises and makes policy recommendations for our schools. I believe that that is the system for the last 15 years that have brought public school families back to our schools. That is the system that has also improved the achievement of our students, our black and brown students who were way behind the national average in achievement in math and reading, and have caught up dramatically because of our steadfast commitment to public education reform. I am so proud of the work that our teachers do, especially in the last 2 years during this pandemic, and I am unwilling. In fact, I think that it is a seminal issue in this election that you elect a mayor who wants the responsibility, who wants to be accountable to the voters for advancing improvement of our schools.
Thank you, Ms. Bowser. Mr. White, same question.
I do not support our current system of mayoral control at schools because as the father of 2 black girls, I refuse to accept that a school system in which 60% of black and brown students are behind grade level is good enough. It is not. We have the most extreme version of mayoral control in the country, and it is not working for students of color. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to appoint a chancellor who understands my vision and shares my sense of urgency for fixing our schools, and who will work with me on replacing our teacher impact system in my first year. I'm going to work with the council to appoint an independent state superintendent of education who will hold us accountable to outcomes for all children. And I'm going to work to study how we empower our State Board of Education so that they can better amplify the voices of our school communities and our parents' voices that are being left out of the conversation all the time. A lot of people will have you believe that in education there are only 2 options, either the system that was broken for our students 15 years ago or the system that is broken for our students right now. And I tell you, we got more than 2 options. We need a mayor who understands that.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
the mayor
White.
I'll be.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Butler, and I will remind those who aren't speaking if you can shut off your microphones for the AV. Mr. Butler, one minute.
Thank you. I will maintain the current system, but I believe we can build on it and improve on it. I think it is reckless for a mayor to say that they want to deconstruct or tear down the whole thing when we can simply improve on the current system that we have. My goal as mayor is to run the entire city, and that's what I will begin to do from day one. We will focus on ensuring that the per pupil formula that's presently used is reinforced with earmarked funds to support those schools east of the river. And in addition to that, we will ensure that teacher retention is our highest priority, that we provide workforce housing, that we know and reintroduce the teachers' college so that we can lower the rate of teacher attrition. I believe that is the best way to run our school system, with the mayor running the entire city, and that's what I will do from day one.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. We're going to move on to the issue of housing. And this is coming from an audience member. As a lifelong resident and first responder, I find it very challenging to obtain home ownership. I've been outbid several times, and I think we can all relate to that one. As mayor, how would you make this possible for affordable housing and for residents who, in many cases, are natives, invested into the city, to actually have equity in this city? And I'll start with Mr. Butler.
Thank you for the question. I think we also know that the city is roughly 80% renters. And what I am proposing to bring more deeply affordable housing is this. We presently use a formula that's antiquated, I believe, is HUD's formula to calculate what AMI is. The AMI is used typically in situations of inclusionary zoning. The reason why HUD's formula is problematic, it's a regional formula. We live around some of the richest counties in America, and it artificially inflates what's affordable in DC. Nothing in the law right now compels us to stick with HUD's formula. From day one, I will focus on aborting that formula and adopt our own regional formula. In addition, I will go into the city's own housing stock to provide affordable housing. We rely too much on private developers for our present affordable housing. In addition, I will impose rent control on every dwelling place, including those that were built post-1976. This is not something I'm going to wait 8 years or 6 years to do. This is something I'm going to do from day one.
Thank you very much. Mr. Robert White, your plan for affordable housing and make home ownership possible for more residents.
On the issue of affordable housing, as mayor, I'm going to use the only seat in this city powerful enough to stand up to developers and say that, look, what we need in this city, if you want to be part of our community, is more low-income housing, workforce housing, multifamily housing, and senior housing. We need a mayor who's going to make that clear to the developer community. As mayor, I'm going to also focus on home ownership opportunities for all of our residents. I'm going to work with the council to develop a right of first refusal program for owner-occupied housing so that our residents are not being outbid by folks who want to come in and flip houses. So we're going to work on that together. We're also going to continue to support and expand supports for first responders and teachers, the folks that we want to be able to live in our community, because it is not fair that the folks who really make our community move, our teachers and our first responders, are the ones who least can afford to live here. So we're also going to work on multifamily housing, ownership opportunities, and we're going to be more deliberate with how we put housing on public lands, because it can't continue as it is now.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Bowser? I mean, I think what we've heard today is I'm gonna, I shoulda, I woulda. I'm a study, maybe, mighta, shoulda. That's what I heard. I'm gonna tell you what I've done. I've been an ANC commissioner, a ward council member, and the mayor of my hometown. I have, with the support of the council, invested $1 billion in affordable housing in this city. We will create 36,000 units. We've done it for veterans. We've done it for seniors. We've done it for families. We've done it for people who have been here for 5 generations and for 5 minutes. We know how to make the investments and get stuff done. What we need in the next 4 years is proven leadership, not platitudes. My colleagues here have been on the council, they have been in other offices, but they have failed to deliver anything. Have you noticed that we haven't been able to talk about real investments in Ward 8 except for me?
So I heard the conversation about $1 billion in affordable housing. And almost every time I hear that, the response is affordable for who and where the hell is it? I live in the District of Columbia where we get calls from residents every day who are living in dilapidated housing. The Housing Production Trust Fund, in which we boast about, has become a slush fund for developers. Let's tell the truth. Not talking about what I shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I rewrote the law because we noticed that most of that money that we had in that budget was going to people earning between $80,000 and $120,000 a year. Most people I know don't make that type of money. And so it's imperative that we have the right vision and the right solution. Also, I created a bill around displacement-free zones to freeze the taxes in and around areas hard to see about development, because we can see these new buildings going up. Well, what about the people who lived there before? We are engineering gentrification with this current administration right here in Washington, D.C. And so it's on us to fix it. And as mayor, it's my duty and my job to make sure we can create a D.C. where everybody can live here in our district. Thank you.
30 seconds. seconds. Mr. Butler?
I'm a gonna, would've, should've, could've. That's the mayor's statement. But that implies to the mayor of the city. Why was the question proffered to us today about affordable housing? The only reason the question came before you today is because everyone knows it's not affordable in D.C. Not affordable in D.C. So when she's saying, I'm a gonna, would've, should've, could've, she's talking about herself. 3 blind mice.
30 seconds, Mr. Robert White.
Let me talk to you about what I did. As soon as I got to the council, I passed a bill that would focus our government on converting office buildings into affordable and workforce housing, but this administration couldn't implement it. 2 years ago, I passed a bill that would allow us to acquire existing housing and make it affordable housing immediately, but this administration couldn't implement it. With my council colleagues, we funded enough housing vouchers to house every unhoused resident living in tent encampments, but you got eyes and you see the same thing I'm seeing, that this administration couldn't implement it. So what I'm gonna do now is run for mayor so we have a mayor who can implement.
Let's talk about homelessness. Let's talk about homelessness, because the truth. It's okay if they don't want me to talk. I can wait my turn.
On the issue of homelessness.
Excuse me. Let me have your attention, please. Thank you. These are our guests. In case you didn't hear that at first, okay? They are the guests of the Wardate Democrats, okay? So please allow all of our guests to speak. If you are in disagreement with what they say, you know what to do, right? You'll vote on June 21st. In the meantime, they are our invited guests, so we're asking you to respect them. Please let them speak. It's okay to be lively, but let them speak. Sorry, Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Troy. So we are nearing the end of this lively debate. So we're only going to have a couple of questions before we move on to closing remarks. So thank you, Troy, for that announcement. Let's please give these candidates our respect and the floor so they can answer these important questions. Let's move on and talk about our seniors in this community, because we did receive lots of questions from our seniors. Many elected officials voted to distribute food and supplies in the community during the COVID-19 crisis. How did you promote the mental health of our seniors? And this isn't just in programming, but one-on-one, speaking, visiting, flowers, phone calls. What have you done to support our seniors who oftentimes were suffering with their own mental health challenges, isolated during the pandemic? So I'll start with Mr. Butler.
I want you all to fact check me on this. I've been to nearly every senior home in the city. I have partnered with Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and I delivered that on my own transportation with my own trucking. I sat in the senior centers talking with them, asking them what their needs are. They call me on my cell phone directly. That's the type of commitment we need from a mayor on day one. That's the type of commitment that I will bring to the mayor's office. In addition to that, early in this campaign, I promised that this city would have one of the most robust mental and behavioral health systems in the country. We will be the entire envy of the country, and I will deliver and begin working on that promise from day one. Seniors must not be the first to be talked about and the last to look after. I will look after them just as I talk about them.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Mr. White, not only in the COVID-19 crisis, but how will you continue to support our seniors in this community?
I'll continue to do what I've been doing. as a council member and as a mayoral candidate, which is showing up to our senior homes and talking to seniors about what you need. We don't need a mayor who tells people what they need. We need a mayor who's going to listen to people and fill the gaps that they identify. And what seniors tell me consistently is that they need better transportation options. They need accessibility across our city. They need access to fresh foods, and they need mental health supports. I talked to you a little earlier about one of the mental health pipelines that I'm trying to open up, and yes, I'm trying to do it in this budget and trying to take it from a slush fund. I've talked to you earlier about how I'm going to close our fresh food gaps, close our food deserts. A senior told me last week in Wardate at the Robert Walker House, he said you shouldn't call it a food desert because food deserts are not man-made. You should call it food apartheid. And I heard him loud and clear. What he was saying is that we can do something about this, but we need a mayor who's going to do something about it. As mayor, watch how I show up for our seniors to solve the problems that we have been talking about and I've been working as a council member to invest in.
Mr. White, thank you. Ms. Bowser.
Thank you, and I am very grateful to our seniors who spoke up, listened, followed public health advice, got vaccinated so they could get back to life. Seniors in Washington, D.C. were 95% vaccinated and really stuck together through this pandemic, so I want to say thank you. I also know that we have done a we have been very strategic about how we stay in touch with our seniors. One of my big concerns about seniors is isolation. And when seniors were disconnected from our senior wellness centers, we became even more concerned. But it's a whole group of people who don't have family, who don't come out to senior centers and are truly isolated. And so as a community, how to reach out and touch them is important. Technology is important. We shouldn't assume that our seniors aren't on their iPhones and iPads and send text messages on Facebook and all of the other social media. So staying in touch with them through those means is important as well, and making sure that we're delivering wellness, nutrition, but also companionship. Care for people who are supporting our seniors is also key to the work we do.
Thank you, Ms. Bowser. Mr. White, same question.
For those who know me, know that during the pandemic, we've gathered over 100 volunteers to feed over 950 plus seniors every day. And so we're not just talking about what we want to do, what we're going to do. We're talking about when duty calls, we step up. We're on the front line. We answer those calls. And so what I know is that seniors who have been isolated or not having access to services, we knocked on their door, we got them on a Zoom call to communicate with them because they matter as well as everyone else. We can't say we can't find seniors. I'm going to tell you why that's a lie, because we find them on election time. When it's time to vote, we knock on their doors, we send them flyers, we send them emails, we do blasts to their cell phones and house phones. Seniors are the backbones of Washington, D.C. And most of us wouldn't be up here if somebody didn't pave the way for us to have these opportunities. And so I want to also highlight Ms. Beverly and Ms. Connie, who passed away during this pandemic, who was on the front line with us, advocating for those seniors right here in Ward 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. I'm going to end this on a fun, light note. I think you all can appreciate that, a little lightness towards the end, a little levity. So this is coming from an audience member. We haven't had an indoor roller skating rink since the closing of Kalorama Skating years ago. And as you know, roller skating is a big part of our culture. Can you make a promise to build a roller skating rink in Washington, D.C.? A lot of us are going over to Ward 9 on Branch Avenue. So, Mr. Butler.
I promise I'll bring it if you teach me how to roller skate really well. Okay, that may include you holding me up for a little bit, but I promise I'll bring it.
Mr. White.
Funny you should ask. I was watching on Instagram the other day, Usher, the performer, roller skate, and I looked at my wife and I said, I feel like I should be able to roller skate. She laughed at me. So you won't see me on the floor, but here's what I'll say. There was a time where we had skate rinks across our city, and I'm going to do my best to bring at least some of them back, because we got to get more things that pull our community, and particularly our young people.
Ms. Bowser.
Well, I have proposed an indoor recreation complex to go at RFK. We have been focused on RFK. It's 100 acres. Is that in Ward 8 now? It's, okay, it's in Ward 7. It's right next door in Ward 7. But we are going to work with the federal government to get control of our land, to make the infrastructure investments necessary, to bring our football team back, but to also have housing, jobs, a connection to the river, and a $60 million indoor sporting complex, which hasn't been designed. So we can think about how it can include skating or be on an adjacent section of the RFK campus. Now that takes vision, it takes hard work, and it takes, not all of us agree that that is how the campus should be laid out, but I know we can have recreation, we can have our football team, we can have a connection to the river, we can have affordable housing and jobs.
Mr. White.
As the chairman of Department of Recreations, my commitment has always been to restore extracurricular activities for youth, young adults, our seniors, and even pets in Washington, D.C. In fact, we're in the process of building 4 new recreation centers right here in Ward 8. And so to say I'm going to commit to a skating rink, I can't do that at this juncture, because I know that we're in a housing crisis. We're in an education crisis, a homeless crisis, a public safety crisis, and so it's about priority. And if we're going to build a facility that's to do skating, we can build a gym, or you can skate in the gym. And so I think that we have to address all needs in Ward 8 and Washington, D.C. To address extracurricular activities. So I can't not, just because the mayor forum say I'm commit to building a skating ring, we have so many other pressing priorities right now in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our candidates for mayor of the District of Columbia, please give them a round of applause. All right, before everyone packs up and goes, we do have 1 minute closing remarks. I just wanted to give y'all a little love, right? I just wanted us to thank our candidates for being here and being engaged in the process. We have 1 minute closing remarks, and I will start with Mr. White.
Thank you. My name is Trayon White, and we are in a peculiar place in Washington, D.C. where we have to make some decisions. In the last election, less than 19% of the population came out to vote for mayor. And so we keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome. That is the definition of insanity. See, I watch and hear people argue about who's not doing this and who's not doing what. Guess what? No one is coming to save us but us. We are in a time in history where we can elect a person who's going to put people over politics. Trayon White has a proven record of doing just that for the last 19 years plus on the front line, in the trenches, and create equitable solutions for Washington, D.C. On June 21st, you have an opportunity to change the trajectory of D.C., and that's Trayon Washington, D.C. White. We can no longer complain. We must get involved and do something. So don't just stand there. Do something. So on June 21st, you can start with your mail-in ballots. Vote Trayon White for mayor, and let's help save Washington, D.C. Thank you, and God bless.
Ms. Bowser, 1 minute.
Thank you, Ward 8, and I am pleased to be here, and thank you for your tough questions, for your well wishes, and for the work that we will do ahead together. When I look back over my time in office, I know I've kept my promises to Ward 8. And that is what is most important to me. There was Sandra Seegers, who lives in Ward 8, said something about me, that I made a promise to close down DC General. It was a homeless shelter for children where we lost a child, and build homeless shelters in all 8 wards in the city, not just Ward 8. And she said, I'm going to stick with Bowser because I've never seen a mayor do that. Greta Fuller, right here in historic Anacostia, said, she had a living room meeting with us while she was running for mayor, and every single thing that she promised, to bring more retail, to invest in a TIF, the first ever economic development tool put in Ward 8 that's transformed the whole city but had never been done in Ward 8, we brought to Ward 8. We brought sit-down restaurants and we brought jobs. Before this pandemic, we had the lowest unemployment levels in Ward 8 in the history of that number being recorded. So I've kept my promises to Ward 8, and I'm asking Ward 8 to stick with me, because the next 4 years are not for on-the-job training. The next 4 years are putting people back to work, catching our kids up, making sure our streets are safer, and bringing our city back. And I'm asking you to vote for a proven leader.
Mr. White, 1 minute.
Ward 8, thank you so much for having me. It is my honor to be here with you. I want you to understand the reason that I'm running for mayor, the reason I'm on the council is because as a lawyer, I'm an outlier in my family. I want to focus on public safety because I have a 3-year-old daughter who had a gun pulled on somebody right in front of her daycare. I want to focus on housing because I'm so mad that my dad, the proudest Washingtonian you will ever meet, can't afford to live in this city, and that's too much like the rest of my family. I want to focus on education because as a father, I know the potential of my children and I know the potential of young people across our city. What we need now is a mayor with a sense of urgency, a mayor with new ideas. Because most people in the city know we're not doing good enough, and you should be scared of anybody who says the only person who can be mayor is the person who has been mayor. That ain't a good slogan. What we need is somebody who sees our people eye to eye, somebody who's going to relentlessly fight for our communities every single day with everything that we have, somebody who's going to do the work, build a bench, and move out the way so other leaders can come through. What I'm telling you is that our city won't be the same. On June 22nd, you're going to see excitement in our city like you have not seen in a long time, because we are going to blueprint the next decade for our city, and that decade includes you and you and you and you and me. It includes all of us. I'm going to be a mayor who understands that D.C. must be a D.C. for all of us, and I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Butler, 1 minute.
Thank you, Ward 8. This is my second time here today. I did a meet and greet this morning. This is my 6th debate in a row. I am tired. I am tired, and I'll be honest with you. But D.C. needs a fighter, someone that will genuinely put the work in to fight for the people. We've heard the mayor talk about that we need tested leadership, folks. I want to tell you this. This test has been failed miserably by the mayor. But not only by the mayor, but by the council members that currently run this city. We have a combined total of 30+ years of failed leadership. I promise you, if you do more of the same, you simply will get more of the same. You do not have to be relegated to more of the same. I will be prepared from day one to turn this city around, make it one of the safest cities in America, to bring deeply affordable housing, to nix our homeless issues, and to make our schools make the grade. That is why I'm asking for your vote on June 21st. I want to leave like the Reverend James Cleveland said, I am in no ways tired. God bless you, and God bless the soon-to-be 51st state.
Okay, and our candidates for mayor of the District of Columbia, again, a round of applause, please, folks. And that concludes our debate.
All right, give it up, everyone, for the mayor candidates, mayoral candidates here. Thank you so much. Also, will you please help me thank Delia Gonzalez, please? Hello? Are we here? I know it's a long day. Thank you. Please help me thank Delia Gonzalez. She's been an incredible moderator of these back-to-back debates. Okay, listen, folks. especially those of us who are online. Again, you will be able to vote in these 40 vote centers across the district during early vote period that runs June 10th through June 19th. And 90 vote centers will be open on Election Day, Tuesday, June 21st. In addition to those 40 vote centers, 90 vote centers will be open on Election Day, and 55 drop boxes will be open all across the city. You can vote at any of those locations. Take a look at these slides up here. You'll see the vote locations in Ward 8. Vote in those locations if you want to stay in the ward, but to be clear, you can vote anywhere in the city. I know folks online are listening, not the folks here, so I'm just, it's for the people who are online. Okay, once again, it's okay. It's okay. Once again, the straw poll is now open. You can go to tinyurl.com/Ward8poll. You can take the straw poll, vote for who you believe won the debate. Those of you online, that's where you can go, Ward 8 poll, after you hit tinyurl.com/Ward8poll. Okay? And we want to lastly thank, we're not ready yet. I have an online audience. All right, lastly, we want to thank our sponsor, the DC Democratic Party, for being a sponsor of today's event. We also want to thank the campaigns of Oye Owolewa, Linda Gray, Brian Spiva, Robert White, and Trayon White. You'll see their ads in our program book or on our marketing materials. So please check them out over the next election, over this election cycle, okay? Now we do have a raffle ticket. We have an incredible, lovely mug that says Ward 8 Democrats on it. As a thank you for those who, in here at least, have stayed with us the whole time. If you are, I can pull it, it's fine. Okay, yep, I was gonna say, if you have a ticket, pull your tickets out so that we can identify who is the winner of this particular mug. And we have 2 mugs, so we're gonna pull tickets. So, we need everyone's attention so you can hear our ticket numbers, okay? All right, the first one is last 3 digits, 136. Check your ticket numbers for 136.